I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, starting out tonight by seeing if there's any public comment from the board.
Yeah, I want to
Jeffries.
acknowledge that yesterday was Martin Luther King Day, Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and it's a good day for people. I think technically the reason for the holiday is to promote volunteerism, so I want to just encourage people to reflect on all the contributions that many of us have made historically for to increase the opportunities for more of us. So just want to point that out, and next month I plan on putting together a small series just about the contributions that different people have made over time and during public comment, making about a minute long kind of just statement. That way we all can be better informed.
Thank you.
No comment now.
I have a public comment. I attended Heather's recycling program last Wednesday, and it was really informative. Is it up on YouTube yet?
I haven't checked.
Oh, I hope it's up there soon. I wanted to add, actually, I was at Best Buy, and you can recycle rechargeable batteries there, because you can't throw them in the rubbish.
Right.
But Best Buy will take them. And I also wanted to remind folks that compost bins is a great way to reduce waste, and they're available at the DPW. You can buy a compost bin for $43, but if you buy a rain barrel too, which is normally $56, you can get them both for $80, which is a $19 saving. So help reduce waste and take care of our stormwater, and buy a rain barrel and a compost bin, please. Also on storm drain clearing, we and our neighbors clear the storm drain near our fire road to reduce flooding. The Stormwater Task Force encourages everyone who can adopt a storm drain to keep it clear of snow and leaves. The DPW needs our help. They can't do it by themselves.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I like the pitching of the rain barrel and compost you put on your
I
best
know.
infomercial voice. That was
Thank
excellent.
you, thank you.
And just to, it is
But
up on
wait,
YouTube.
there's more. I also couldn't avoid the irony that the recycling program that was recorded will be recycled, so that was good too. All right, any public comment from the public? Okay. Announcements, one announcement. Just a reminder again, as I said I would do every week until this happens, but the company Unitil has filed for a rate increase, and they will have their required public hearing in our district as required by the Department of Public Utilities, and that will be February 26, 2020 at 7 p.m. at the Fitchburg Memorial Middle School on 615 Rollstone Street in Fitchburg. So again, any persons interested in commenting on this matter may appear at the public hearing or file written comments with the Department of Public Utilities not later than the close of business on 5 p.m. on February 26, 2020. I encourage anybody who has commentary or input or opinion or editorial to go to that meeting. Okay, appointments, 7:05. A request to hunt on town properties by George Lorden and Paul Lawn, if you would please. You would introduce yourselves individually by name and street address, and then introduce what you are requesting, please.
Paul Lawn, I live at 158 Island Road in Lunenburg, requesting permission to hunt on Lunenburg Conservation Land.
George Burden, 39 Cortlandt Circle, Lunenburg. Same, hunting on conservation land.
Did you have any specific in mind, or all conservation land?
We gave 3, but I guess we'd kind of like to leave it open for, anything that we could. So any conservation land, we'd like to leave it open to that extent.
Now, by hunting, I'm assuming you were, just so people at home are aware, you're talking about firearm hunting.
Correct.
As opposed to bow hunting.
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. our understanding is bow hunting is legal on conservation land, that's correct?
That is correct.
Without permission, okay?
Yep. I would open this up to the board to have a conversation with the applicants about questions or concerns they may have.
Yeah,
And
what,
also leave it to you, if you gentlemen want to give reasons. I mean, obviously, there's a firearm prohibition in town, and so the firing of firearms is not allowed anywhere in town except by permission of property owner, or in the case of public lands, the Board of Selectmen. So that's why you're coming here. So if you want to suggest to us or convince us why we should allow it, this would be the opportunity, and then the board may ask questions.
Okay, I have no comment.
okay. So, I have a couple of different questions. So the first was which properties, but I think you've answered that. What were the three that you were looking to kind of prioritize?
The town forest on Mulpus,
Okay,
Caudry, conservation land,
okay.
and then I think they call it the Lane property on Holdman.
I guess I have a question. Because it's conservation land, doesn't conservation have to weigh in?
No.
No, there's,
Because, sorry.
no, there's no restriction on the deed. There's no conservation restriction on the deed, and that was in town council's opinion, that's,
But it's also, wouldn't matter, because the firing of firearms, the use of firearms is prohibited by town bylaw, which in the bylaw itself expressly says it can only be permitted by the Board of Selectmen.
Okay.
Are there certain animals that you're looking to hunt?
I would want to be interested in hunting any legal game during any legal Massachusetts season.
Okay.
Primary deer and turkey.
I did, deer and,
And turkey.
Turkey.
Yep.
I guess I'd just like to make a comment. As a person who enjoys walking on conservation lands, I would not be in favor of people being allowed to hunt on conservation lands in Lunenburg. You know, there are plenty of places farther north and more rural than Lunenburg where I think you may expect people to hunt, but personally, I would be appalled if the Board of Selectmen allowed it.
So, I mean, that's where I'd have a question. What's the policy is to get a, permission by the Board of Selectmen? I'm just kind of trying to understand how you would choose someone over someone else. That I'm kind of curious of that.
I wouldn't choose anyone.
but no one has ever, I've been on the board on and off now for 13 years, and this is the first time anybody's ever requested it when I went on the board. I know you came last year, and I saw in the records, but when I wasn't on.
I'd just like
Yeah,
to
but-
comment, Phyllis, for me, I know you mentioned something further north. We both work, 50-plus hours a week, and hunting close to home is kind of convenient for us, so I'd just throw that out there.
Yeah, right, so isn't walking close to home.
Mr.
I
Chair, if
agree,
I
I
may.
enjoy walking myself.
Mrs. Adams?
I most often go towards my concept of consistency, and I feel like if you say yes once, then the answer has to be yes, because there'd be no reason to say no as continued requests came in. We have no policies that limit the amount or really control the scenario at all. Spend a lot of time at all of these, and actually spent a great day of this past weekend out in the Mulpus and Cowdrey area, and I have a hard time, especially because I'm usually out there with groups of children. Every April, I take about 28 kids out on Earth Day birthday hike. I have a hard time seeing these places as hunting grounds. I really, truly don't see that intersecting in a way that makes sense. Especially because if we say yes to one person or two people, then what's the limit, and how do you hang out in these parcels walking and hiking without feeling like you might be hunted?
I would assume that the town would have a great deal of liability if they permitted it.
Yeah, I don't know. It just doesn't
There
feel.
is no
we do. We
liability
do.
based on Massachusetts law if the only time a liability comes into play is if the hunter pays the landowner. Other
I'd-
than that, there is no liability.
I'd be less concerned about liability and more concerned about just what could happen.
Well, we,
I mean, I don't know who's liable if my child's shot on a hike, but it's still not a good outcome.
Yeah, right.
to add to the discussion, we do allow hunting with firearms on the Hunting Hill property. That is allowed.
That's just required, right?
That was deeded that
That
way.
was deeded that way. But
Yes.
we do,
But we don't have a choice.
but we still do. It's still, you're bringing up liability and things like that, but we already do.
Yeah,
And-
but we probably wouldn't if we.
It's a place where it's
didn't have to.
anticipated or expected.
It's also
because
not
it's
up
described.
for discussion because Huntington Hill is deeded that way. So
Yeah.
it's not like we are going out of our way as a Board of Selectmen allowing it. It was
Right.
allowed when we took the property. I don't know what the situation was. I don't even know how many years ago it was. So different
it's-
world if it was done 30 or 40 years ago.
My point is, it's not unprecedented. But
On
it's-
conservation land it is.
it is conservation land.
Also, the property lines
is
are
what-
really hard.
I-
Hunting Hill, I don't think is.
Let him finish first.
And also, for more background, any state forest or state property, hunting is also allowed on. So that is also very prevalent in the area. We have state forest in the north of town and right over the border in Townsend. So to act like this is a faraway thing is not true.
But it's never happened on these parcels, so it is.
It is a
So I would say two things. When you say it's not unprecedented, I would counter that it is unprecedented that the Board of Selectmen has okayed a request on its own. The deeded property was not the Board of Selectmen, it was the town who probably did it as well as the whole board, well in advance of anybody asking. I don't know what the situation was, but that was not that it was prohibited and somebody asked and we gave it. So this is kind of unprecedented.
Yes,
Okay,
but
as
the-
far as hunting in state forest, I would say that while that's true, I would use that as a counter argument, like, it's not that far away, so go to the state forest and go on.
Okay. Again, I'm just trying to point out that it's not a faraway issue. It's something that people around here do. And
And they have the opportunity to do. So then they can use those properties and take advantage of that opportunity.
And I have a question. A lot of the conservation land abuts private property unless, I mean, sometimes I hike with the GIS out just out of curiosity, but how do you make yourself aware of when you're close to private property?
GPS, same thing. There's hunting apps that tell you where you are, and, honestly, that forest that we're talking about with Mulpus, that actually abuts you can get to Hunting Hill from there. And that's one of the reasons we targeted that area, just to, it gives it a wider range, so, it's not that far from Hunting Hill, honestly. It's walking distance.
I mean, we can venture a guess here that if both of these gentlemen are duly licensed to carry firearms
That's
and they're
correct.
law-abiding citizens, and that, I mean, Max, how long you've had a
Got a
license?
license to carry a concealed firearm for 6 years in the town of Lunenburg.
6 years. and you-
5 years.
5 years. And prior to that, have you had a license to carry?
Not a license to carry, but an FID card, yes.
Okay.
From the time I was 16 years old.
Yeah, me too, as a child, I've been hunting with my brother.
Okay, so it's fair to say that both of you have been familiar with firearms for at least 2 decades each?
Very.
At least. I mean, I think it's reasonable, in my own opinion, as someone who has used firearms rather extensively for the majority of my life. I mean, I think it's reasonable that if someone is a law-abiding citizen, that they will follow the law when it comes to discharging that weapon, and that they will only shoot when there is a viable target that they can hit, and which then which will result in a kill. I'm very curious, though, Mr. Chair, if we can hear from the member of the Conservation Commission that's here.
I see him waiting, and this seems apropos as any time. Mr. Pease, if you would like to speak? And when you speak, let us know in what capacity you are speaking, please.
My name is Bob Pease, 11 Wintergreen Court. I'm here representing myself. I only learned about this afternoon when I happened to look at the agenda of the Board of Selectmen and noticed that this was on the Board of Selectmen's agenda. I would call your attention to the fact, so I'm not representing the Conservation Commission, even though I am a member of the Conservation Commission. I am not representing, they don't know I'm here because we didn't know this was on the agenda. I gave you excerpts from the Conservation Commission's land use policy, which is posted on the Conservation Commission's website. These are all the excerpts that apply to hunting. You'll notice that the Land Conservation Commission's land use policy says the possession or discharge of firearms is prohibited. On any Conservation Commission land other than Hunting Hill as specified elsewhere in this document. Hunting by firearms is only allowed in the Hunting Hill property jointly owned by Lunenburg, Shirley, and the Mass Fisheries and Mass Wildlife in accordance with MGL Chapter 131. And the discharge of firearms on any property owned by a Conservation Commission is prohibited at all times. Hunting by bow is allowed in all properties. And then there's this clause that says no hunting is allowed within 500 feet, so on and so forth.
So the Conservation Commission does prohibit it on their land.
Right, but we, as the Board of Selectmen...
According to the data
we have
from the citizens.
According, it's my interpretation, my own personal interpretation of what the meaning of these words is, that hunting is not allowed anywhere by firearms, is not allowed anywhere but Hunting Hills. But that is my own personal interpretation.
Yeah, I can't make sense of having hunting in these spaces. There, I mean, it says not near 150 feet of any road. There's a lot of work to put in, pretty significant trails. I don't know they're not roads, but we've really set things up for accessibility, and we're working towards that, and drawing people in while there's people in tree stands in these places. It's just, it gives an opportunity to two people, but I think it gets in the way of recreation for far more in terms of instilling fear. And do we warn people, like, wear your orange vest because there's now hunters? Like, I just don't feel comfortable. I don't think it's the right direction to head with these parcels. I think the intent of these parcels is for really simple passive recreation for the residents.
When I was
Are
young...
you against hunting in general or just firearms?
I don't think my opinion there even matters, but.
It sounds like it's hunting in general, whereas we're just asking for firearms.
Well, I
because
think that you're 100% incorrect, and I think it doesn't apply here, but it has my opinion to do with hunting or firearms
Well, you mentioned
is unknown, and therefore shouldn't be.
Well, you mentioned tree stands, and it specifically says right here, I just read this, that the gentleman gave me, it says tree stands must be removed by...
And
the end
on
of
Hunting Hill.
No, it says, it doesn't say Hunting Hill directly.
We allow bow hunting, so.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
So I was just making a comment about the tree stand, that tree stand could apply for bow hunters as well.
Whether I'm for or against hunting as a global thing is unrelated to whether or not I think it's appropriate for these parcels in the role that we play.
When I was young, I lived in North Dakota, 10 miles from the Canadian border. And when I went walking in the fall, I realized that could be hunted. And so I just stopped walking in the fields at all.
The hunters were hunting you?
They were hunting, and I was not comfortable being on land that was being hunted. And, living in North Dakota that was the only time I experienced that. And it was not a comfortable feeling, and I would not want to experience that on conservation land in Lunenburg.
I have a question for Mr. Pease. I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
What you just handed out, is it your understanding that this decision, if granted, would be not the Board of Selectmen, but it would be under the Conservation Commission, or that the Conservation Commission regulations, since most of that land is under conservation control, is out of bounds for the Board of Selectmen to even make a decision upon?
I don't know the answer to that question. It's like, clearly the Board of Selectmen have higher authority than the Conservation Commission.
Well, on certain things, not on everything. I mean,
Well, but on a
especially
lot of
conservation
things,
land.
okay? And our agent feels that since we have that clause in there that says, discharge of fire alarm shall comply with Article 9, Section 2 of the town bylaw, which is why which is the clause which these gentlemen are here under tonight. Our agent, since it says that, he feels that creates ambiguity.
Right.
And he and I disagree on that.
Okay.
And so that's why I'm very clear to say I'm here representing,
I understand. I just wanted to
Yeah.
know if you guys had discussed.
we have not discussed what, to mine, we've discussed this like twice since, I've been on the board for 4 years now. We've discussed it twice since I've been on the board, and we've never, for example, we just took and purchased, we got complaints that people were at Rob's Hill walking around with firearms hunting. So we just purchased signs for our agent to put up that said bow hunting only. So,
I appreciate it.
Okay, I would like to make a motion that we do not permit hunting on these parcels of Lunenburg Conservation Land.
I second that.
Firearm hunting.
I just, one question I had.
Sure.
You said 13 years, you've never been, this has never been a request?
Not-
So it's interesting, because I searched on the internet, and just, that's how we found that we had to request it. And there was an article that, 6 years ago or so, that someone called the town manager saying they saw someone hunting, and the manager gave they need permission, and permission was requested, and that person could have gotten permission. It was just kind of interesting, that
Yeah,
comment, if it's never come up in the...
Again, you
board.
can do it if you go to a private property owner, they can give you.
Yeah, no, this was on conservation land specifically. Someone commented that they were walking on conservation land, they saw someone with a gun, they called, and the town manager said that, the permit, you can get permission by request.
Unless I was out that meeting, I
Or-
never
but
heard of
maybe
any
they-
other
Maybe they
meeting.
didn't request.
Well, that's what I'm
Maybe-
saying.
Maybe they didn't request permission.
Right, it was interesting that the town manager commented that, the request would have to be made by
Right.
someone, so just an interesting, comment. It just sounds like that the town doesn't maybe have a specific policy around it. I mean, there's obviously some confusion of who maybe has the authority to permit the request. It's just something I think the town, either they allow or don't allow. I mean, I'm fine. If someone says you can't do it, it should be consistently applied to the town, but
Right.
We agree.
I'm
But
fine.
we've never granted anybody permission, like I said, in my tenure on the board.
Yep.
Never granted anybody this
Okay.
permission, so.
Fair enough. I mean, I think it's just something you need to think about. If you do deny us, it might as well set it in a rule.
Because nobody's ever asked.
Yeah.
Well,
It is in the regulations.
it's in the
yeah.
regulations that it can be overridden by by the Board of Selectmen. There may be some reasons why we would want to do it at some point, so we're not going to, it is in the policy, you can't do it. The only way you can discharge a firearm on public properties is with the Board of Selectmen's approval. So it is a policy already, it's in the bylaw.
No, but I guess the policy, if you're denying one person, and what would the basis of allowing someone else? So if you deny us tonight...
Maybe it's not by people, maybe it's condition. There's hypotheticals that, let's say the deer population got crazy, like it happened in my wife's hometown of Columbus, Ohio. They had an overrun of areas of deer and no ability to hunt them, so they issued a special license to people to hunt them to thin out the population. So there's for instance, that the Board of Selectmen would want that authority, and it wouldn't necessarily be by person, it would be by situation.
But it might make sense to make a policy, a more restrictive
It
policy.
is. The policy says you can't do it.
Okay,
As
I
part
like
of-
that policy.
So then
part
we'll
of-
add it, we definitely can.
Without special permission. These gentlemen are following the policy and asking permission. It's up to us to decide whether we want to,
Yeah.
give that permission or not.
I agree with Katie that if you give permission to one, then you've got to give permission to...
Well, I don't know
and
about
they've
that.
said the same thing. If you give permission to one, then you have to give permission to others. And so denying it is the safest route.
Well, I think we have some, I hear the motion, I hear the second. As part of the discussion, I'm not in favor of the motion as presented. I support permitting these gentlemen to hunt on town property with a firearm.
I also would support them to do that, and I wish that you had presented to us in a different way, maybe picked a parcel of land to ask for rather than a blanket, and maybe picked a season and explain to the board how finite the actual seasons of hunting with a shotgun is in Massachusetts. It's 1 week for deer hunting in the fall, and 1 or 2 weeks in the spring for turkey.
Yep, 2 weeks in fall.
So it's such a finite thing that you're actually asking. It sounds like this blanket, here, do whatever you want, but it's really such a finite thing.
Yeah, but, I wouldn't know which week it was. I don't...
Begins the Monday after Thanksgiving and runs for 2 weeks.
But ordinary citizens wouldn't.
But we can put up signage if we give them permission. We can put up signage at different parcels or send out some notice.
I think
I
it's
think it
simpler to
creates a
just deny
positive
permission.
environment for a very minimal amount of people and a negative environment for a far larger. So I would side on the side of what benefits the most people, and I think keeping it a safe environment. I mean, I don't like the idea of shotguns. I mean, there's private property, there's other places for hunting, and I
It's
feel
Hunting
like
Hill.
there's been a lot of work from the community and a lot of money allocated towards things like the Lane property with the intent for very passive recreation that I think should involve not being shot at.
Well, hunting is allowed, whenever is allowed by right on all of our land anyway. So it's not like they're going beyond hunting. They're just asking permission to use a firearm during a very
As opposed
limited.
to a bow.
As opposed to a bow during
Right.
a very limited period of time. I'm prepared to vote.
I will say as my only comment, since I haven't weighed in, but number one, I think if we approve this, I mean, I'm glad that Mr. Jeffries went over your records, but I don't know your records. I mean, I'm not saying that you're not telling the truth, but I have no way of knowing that you are or not, but that's number one. Number two is, if we offer it to you, I do agree with the argument that if somebody else came, then we'd have to give it to them. And so how many hunters are we allowed to have? Then we'd have to set policies about how many numbers we're going to have. That's number two. Number three is, all these Conservation Commission properties are promoted as to recreational use, that families would use them, and they're used for seasons. They're not closed for the winter. People go there to ski and snowshoe and whatever, and, with the fact that firearm discharge is by its very nature a dangerous business, I mean, under the best controls, it obviously can be controlled, but, stuff happens, things happen. And so I don't want a mixed use and mixed signals out there myself. So for all those reasons, I would vote against this. I will vote against this. I will vote with the motion. So, any other final comments? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
No.
So 3-2, it is denied.
Okay, thank you for your time.
Thank you. 7:10, a public hearing for Class 2 auto dealer license for Lunenburg Auto Center, Inc., doing business as Lunenburg Auto Center on 36 Summer Street. If the applicant is here, please come forward, identify yourselves, and tell us a little bit about what you are.
Anderson Ribeiro, and I'm from Sterling. Me and my brother, his wife, he has a,
Speak a little louder, please.
sure, Anderson Ribeiro, and I'm from Sterling. Me and my brother, his wife, we are open a business at 36 Summer Street. He has a laryngeal sore throat. He can't talk very well today, so I will speak for the both of us. And as we said in the first meeting, you guys probably has all the information, the meaning of us open a business in this community. It's a little bit different from the business here because we think this is a great community, and open this business is a great way to give it back with affordable prices on our services and helping many other ways that in the future we're going to be coming to you guys to do some stuff together.
Thank you. I would open it up to the board for any questions to the applicants.
No, I think this is very straightforward. They're looking to repair autos, they're looking to sell some autos, and then looking to have up to 6 employees.
And if I may say, we're not changing anything that it's already in place. There's a license in place that our landlord, once will be granted, he will drop his, and we're gonna continue. We didn't change anything for it.
Yeah. Just essentially new management of an
Yes.
existing business.
Okay, if nobody has any other questions, I would entertain a motion.
Move we approve the Class 2 auto dealer license for 36 Summer Street.
Second.
Before we do it, I guess I should have opened with the public hearing notice. I apologize. So the licensing authority will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, January 21st, 2020 at 7:10 PM at Town Hall, 17 Main Street, second floor, Lunenburg, on the application submitted by Lunenburg Auto Center, Inc., doing business as Lunenburg Auto Center, 36 Summer Street, Lunenburg, Mass., for a Class II auto dealer license. The license is to be exercised at premises located at 36 Summer Street. The applicant wishes to open an auto repair business and store and display 53 used motor vehicles for sale and to have hours of operation from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Saturday. So that is now officially open. We have a motion. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to speak for or against this request? Seeing none. Everybody in favor of the motion and the granting of the license, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Good luck.
Thank you very much. You
Thank
guys
you.
have a great night.
Thank you.
Is this, are you filling the date? Just those two? What? Oh, yeah, really.
Old forms.
Okay,
Pass me the paperwork.
7:20, we're getting close to being back on time. We have earth removal permit, public hearing for Daniel and Jean Proctor at 1325 Massachusetts Avenue. We have a public hearing thing I'm supposed to read for this. I guess I can look it up here. We don't have a notice there. All right. Okay, this was posted in the Lunenburg Ledger. The Lunenburg Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, January 21st, 2020 at 7:20 PM at Town Hall, 17 Main Street, second floor, Bellata Meeting Room, Lunenburg, on the application submitted by Daniel and Jean Proctor, 1529 Massachusetts Avenue, Lunenburg, Mass., for an earth removal permit in accordance with Article 9, Section 9 of the town bylaws. Said application is for the removal of 50,000 cubic yards of soil located at 1325 Massachusetts Avenue, Lunenburg, Mass. Plans are available for review in the Board of Selectmen office at 17 Main Street during office hours Monday through Thursday. So, the public hearing is open. I see someone at the mic. Please introduce yourself, and we're off.
Good evening. My name is Frank McPartland from Ducharme and Dillis Civil Engineering Group. I represent the applicant Daniel and Jean Proctor on this project. The applicant, as you said, is proposing to, will this reach over there, or should I pull it closer?
You can take it off. I don't know if the cord will be.
Yeah, you can move that a little closer, yep. And then you can take that off, and
Open to,
I think
get it
together,
close
those two
enough.
movements should reach.
Thank you. So the applicant, as you said, is requesting an earth removal permit to remove approximately 50,000 cubic yards of material from 1325 Massachusetts Avenue. This parcel is located east of Townsend Harbor Road. On the north side, there's an existing single-family residence on the house located in this corner, as well as two existing stables. The property is primarily grassed with a perimeter of woods around the outside.
So one house is on the property?
Yes, there's one existing dwelling on the house. There is a butter up behind it, and then this is the Drawbridge Puppet Theater. So it's the parcel next to that. The existing site is approximately 6 acres. There are wetlands located along the rear property line, but we're working your way west across the parcel. It is grassed with the wooded areas. Now, this second figure is showing the proposed conditions post-earth removal. The applicant is proposing a 20-foot wide wooded buffer around the outside of the property adjacent to the existing parcels. On the far west side, there will be a new row of screening plantings, most likely, we said like an arborvitae type evergreen planting to provide screening. From there, working east, there will be a 3-on-1 slope down to a flat area. So the proposed plan is to remove a wedge of soil. This 3-on-1 slope it's a fairly gentle slope for a proposed cut. I like to call it, I like to say it's mowable. If you're riding that on a ride-on lawnmower, you're not going to roll down the hill sideways. So it's a fairly safe slope. That comes down to a flat area pitched at 1% towards the wetlands on the west side of the property. Once we get close to the wetlands, we're proposing a stormwater management basin to handle any runoff created by both this project and any future development. So the basin itself has been designed to handle and attenuate all rainfall events up to and including the 100-year storm event, assuming approximately 77,000 square feet of impervious on this in this flat area, which would be
Can you repeat that, assuming how many thousands of square feet of impervious?
77,000, so a little under 2 acres.
Of building.
Impervious roofs and,
Impervious being rooftop or
roadway.
blacktop, sidewalk, anything that would have, in stormwater speak, a curve number of 98. The basin itself has been designed for that full build-out contingency. It'll provide groundwater recharge for all small storm events, as well as TSS, total suspended solids removal, through the use of multiple four bays at each stormwater discharge. The intent of this basin design is for it to be constructed during the earth removal process and then not touched again outside of maintenance activities. Each end of the basin has been graded such that you can drive down into it with light earth moving equipment to clean out the basin as needed. And there are 3 manholes constructed at various points along the basin that will provide connection points, again, for a potential future development.
so who will maintain those?
We'll maintain those. During the time that he owns the property, it will be maintained by Dan Proctor.
Yeah, but who will maintain them after?
That would be part of the stormwater management, management design. That would move on to the future property owner if it is sold at some other date.
It seems to be setting the groundwork for another plan, a future development, right?
Yes, that is correct. It's not concrete yet. There are no true future plans, but this is, as you said, setting the groundwork for a future project post-earth removal permit.
And just so I can just clarify that I understand what's happening.
Yes, sir.
It's currently a hill that's located right next to Townsend Harbor Road off of Mass Ave. And so what this plan does is it flattens it out, basically. It creates a catch basin on the bottom side of it. On the very top portion, you have a very quick grade change. And the majority of the land, instead of it being like this, it goes to being like this. And that's the general gist.
Correct.
And as you say, 77,000 square feet of impervious, that's basically accounting for a roadway and about, 8 sublots on that?
That would be accounting for a roadway and some quantity of rooftop
Yeah.
undetermined use
Yeah.
at this point.
Okay.
The parcel is zoned commercial, so that is that would be the most likely use, would be something under that zoning.
Okay.
Where does the stormwater discharge to?
So the stormwater will discharge to the existing wetland network that's off parcel. We've been in front of the Conservation Commission last week for this. So there's an outlet structure here, which would then flow any storm above the 2-year storm, would discharge to this point and then into the wetlands.
And who owns the wetland?
The wetlands are owned, would be owned by this property owner. They're off-site. This here is the property line.
Ugly house. Renovated.
So ugly houses, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that right there?
Yes, so this wetland is between this parcel and the house at the corner of,
They just removed the barn that was collapsing.
But is it on this property? Is the wetland on this property or not?
portions of the wetland are, as well as all of the wetland buffer.
The majority, I'm familiar with the land, so the majority of this area is actually connected across the street. And so across the street, getting into Stan Barney's property is where we have a lot of the catch basins, or rather the swampy area that a lot of this water goes into. So when it comes off of the hill here and goes down past my house, it goes down a little stream, kind of then goes into a bunch of kind of ponds and swamps. And then this is kind of just like an overflow area, basically.
And
Yes.
And it goes on to Stan Barney's property?
Yes.
Does Stan Barney care? I mean, if I was Stan Barney, I wouldn't want your
Oh.
stormwater coming onto my property.
Well, there's going to be a lot of,
If I may speak, there will be less stormwater flowing.
Why?
That's a
I
function
mean,
of a
you're
storm.
adding all this impervious
That is a function.
surfaces.
That is a function of a stormwater management basin that this will.
But you're discharging to
Yes.
the wetland.
But it reduces the peak stormwater that leaves this parcel. So under existing conditions, there is a peak runoff of, using round numbers, let's just say it's 10 CFS in the 100-year storm. If I put 77,000 any amount of impervious on this parcel, I cannot exceed 10 CFS leaving the parcel at any time. So by constructing the basin and having an outlet control structure with various weirs and orifices, I reduce the runoff leaving the parcel. So in this case, in this hypothetical using round numbers, the runoff leaving the parcel would be approximately 8. So it takes the peak runoff from the existing conditions and reduces that down. So there's less erosion, less.
In regards to our purpose with the earth removal permit, I feel like the impervious surface and all that in the stormwater management's more once something's in the planning board jurisdiction. In terms of once there's surfaces and stuff, that's not really our role.
Correct.
This is just for earth removal, in which case I'd be more concerned about erosion during the removal.
Yes.
There's a parcel on Mass Ave, which is a hill that had earth removal non-permitted for a while, then permitted, but neither here nor there. But there was like a 50-year storm, probably wasn't quite 100-year, and the erosion that came there and the amount of sand that came across Mass Ave and ended up in the wetlands, I had never seen anything like it, and I was there for it. And that would be my concern as something's going on and we're in a hill, all the runoff during earth removal. I'd be less concerned about the permanent surfaces than I would be about the process of removing all that content in the in-betweens.
Absolutely. So as far as the construction sequencing out here for the earth removal, the first thing being built is the basin. So during the earth removal activities, if there's any sort of erosion from those activities, it would be caught by the basin. Now, as part of the submittal package, and I apologize for not having it up on the board, but there's a fairly substantial soil erosion control plan that was included in this. The slopes themselves will be stabilized with erosion control matting, as well as various rows of straw wattles along the western property line where the wetlands are. There's a proposed double row of erosion control barrier. So we have fairly robust controls. During the time that grass has not been established, where earth is being removed, the ground will be stabilized with wood chips, and anything that is planned to be open for, I believe it's more than 14 days, will need to be seeded. So there's a fairly detailed sequence of erosion control measures for the parcel.
It was a pretty good, I thought the plan was very consistent with industry norms and standards. So I've a couple questions. I don't remember what you said about the house that's existing. Is that the plan to keep it on the property?
Yes, the plan for the time being is for the house to stay on the
But
parcel.
certainly it has enough frontage that long down the line. I'm sure that there are some visions down the line, but down the line that can be broken off. And the rest of this is zoned commercial, so it could house a pretty substantial building. I have a couple of questions that really started from the neighbors that came in, and I'll just ask a couple. Where will the rock crushing occur? So part of this plan is that, 50,000 cubic yards of soil, and that if large boulders are found along the way, that some will be used decoratively, and then others will be crushed to make room for the basins. So is the plan to crush this rock on site? Okay, yes. So the next question on that one is, has there been an estimate, has there been an estimation on what the impact to air quality will be as a result of the crushing of stone?
He said no crushing of stone on site.
Oh, I thought I heard yes, crushing
no.
of stone. Okay.
Does it document that somewhere in terms of asking the question and receiving the answer? Does it document that, like, the earth removal includes no stone crushing?
That is not currently on the plans,
So
but
if that's a concern of yours and not wanting the residual effects, then I feel like it would need to be documented that
Yeah.
it's not occurring.
condition of the permit. The applicant is willing to have that be a condition of the permit, that rock crushing not occur on the parcel.
All right. The other thing is about 50,000 cubic yards of stuff being moved around. Is the plan to just, I know you have to ask for the permit if you're touching it. How much of it is actually leaving the property?
It will be about 50,000
All right.
cubic
so
yards.
That
So
is like 1,500 truckloads. So, I mean, is that what you're planning? About 1,500 truckloads?
over a number of years.
So we can only permit for 1 year, though. So you're asking for 50,000. I believe our limitations are that, based on what I read, is that the most that we can give you here is 1 year at a time.
Yes, we can only
So
do 1 year, yeah.
if you're asking for 50,000 square feet to be removed, I have to presume that you're going to remove that in a year. That's 1,500 truckloads.
And
am I-
renew it every year. It's not,
So renew it
it's
every
not that the
year.
project can't continue longer than a year.
Sorry, Dan Proctor, owner. So it was my understanding that, yes, you get a permit for a year, but then every year it's renewed.
Right.
So the bottom line is, if I could look in a crystal ball, I'd love to have 50,000 yards going in 2020. Then I could pay for my kids' college. But if it doesn't, and it takes 2 years or 3 years, then it would take 2 or 3 years, that type of thing. So then we renew it in a year, and we come back here, and,
Okay.
we go from there. But,
So-
but ultimately, again, 50,000 yards is the mathematical formula the engineers came up with, so that's the maximum that's going to leave that property.
Okay.
If we take 20,000 yards out and someone shows up a year from now and says, hey, I want to buy that property as is, then that could happen. So again, everything we're trying to do here is to plan for the future.
Yeah.
That's why we're going through the whole process with the stormwater, management. That's why we're going to secure a permit with Mass Highway. That's why we're doing all that, so that does not have to be addressed a year from now, 6 months from now,
Yeah.
by anybody.
What's the destination of the material that you're pulling out of here? Where is it going?
All my jobs, which are, North Worcester County.
Okay.
Yep.
So, I mean, I think what I'm looking at is the impact on the roads of that many truckloads over a relatively short period of time, and what the impact is. Now, just so you're aware of how I'm trying to assess this, I'm trying to look at the reasons why we deny it, and I'm trying to work through those reasons so that way we don't find those three conditions exist. So on the part C, as I assess it, which would be the condition, the reason for denial being result in traffic hazard in residential areas or congestion and physical damage to public ways. What you're saying today is that it's 1,500 truckloads spread out over a period of roughly 3 years.
That's correct.
And Heather, do we know, most of this is Mass Ave, so that's not really our concern, technically. But as it leaves town, it becomes our concern. So out of curiosity, I don't know the answer to this. Do we have a estimate? I know that we say 13,000 vehicles go down Lancaster Ave every day. And I know that Palso and Gravel does quite a bit of work, as does Proctor's in the area. But are our roads able to safely handle that kind of weight?
I would have to defer that question to
Okay.
DPW director.
Yep. All right.
One thing, if I may, say hypothetically I land a job down on Townsend Harbor Road that needs 300 yards of fill to go into a septic system, okay? If I have this property in an earth removal permit, obviously that 300 yards comes from there, okay? If I don't get the earth removal permit, that 300 yards that I have to bring to Townsend Harbor Road is come from a pit in Leominster, or Townsend, or Groton, or whatever. So the progress or whatever happens in the town of Lunenburg is going to happen in the town of Lunenburg because.
Yeah.
So whether the material comes from my pit or someone else's pit,
It's going to happen.
it's going to happen. The
I
truck
agree.
traffic is going to happen. That's just the way it is. Typically, I land a job, we have, 300 yards going to a job, we have trucks for 2 days, haul that 300 yards out, and then I don't have another job for another 3 days until I have to haul another 400 or 500 yards to another job, that type of thing. So, that's why I'm saying the 3 years is how it's going to get spaced out. I mean, I know 1,500 trucks sounds like a lot of trucks, but,
It is. is a
over,
lot.
over 3 years, that's 500 trucks. That's 500 trucks, that type of thing.
think-
Now,
So-
how do you out of curiosity, how do you plan on over 3 years minimizing the impact to the neighbors?
Well, again, like, Frank explained, we do everything systematically, meaning we get a certain section done, we, stabilize the slopes, we seed it, that type of thing. Again, that's the systematic way of doing everything so that it doesn't impact, the environment right there on my particular site. So, I mean, that's really.
Mr. Chair, if I
Mrs.
may.
Adams.
One is, I just wanted to see if there was anybody from the public here to get more perspectives.
I'll ask that when we get there. We're not there yet.
And, okay, I just felt there, that's all. That's my request, is that we hear from them. And then my other, going off of doing some math based on some of Michael Ray's comments, and it's 4 truckloads every day for 300, all 365 days. And then we're talking about it in terms of 3 years, but we're doing a 1-year permit. I think as we look at this, my concerns for the abutters being by such a massive earth removal operation. I mean, that's, if it all happened in a year and we granted this amount in a year, that it could happen. That would be a tremendous amount of noise, dust, disturbance, lots of truck traffic on a congested part of 2A where the schools all are every morning, et cetera. So I'd want to recalculate for, if we're giving a year's permit, what is appropriate for a year's amount.
That's a good idea.
Is just what was sort of on my mind, because
You need to plan for the whole
dust
project,
is a
though.
really serious thing to live next to. I mean, there's a lot of, I wouldn't want that amount of dust coming in my
Dust,
window.
Noise,
But-
traffic.
Okay.
But anyways, if abutters are here, that would be of high interest to me in terms of
It's
continuing.
part of the
to develop.
public hearing. We'll get there. I
Okay.
promise.
Again, 1,500 trucks, if it is 3 years, that's less than 2 trucks a day.
But we can only do
average.
1 year of permitting.
Okay, so do you go to Keating's and say, how much are you going to remove this year? We're only going to give you a 1-year license? You need to plan
We
for the whole
understand those
project.
environments and what's around them, and I'm just saying this is new to the abutters. This is a change.
Okay, but
I
you
think
you
it was
cannot
previous-
have him come in and not present the end result, just
Yeah.
because it can't be accomplished in a year.
But I think Katie's saying maybe he can remove up to
We'd modify.
15,000
It's just a thought based on your math
Yeah.
and that we're talking about 3 years, but we can only permit one. So I want to permit whatever, just like with saying there's no rock grinding, we need that to be part of the permit, or we're not, I don't think we're doing a good job on behalf of everybody involved.
Well, the part of every year is, if something egregious happens, you can cancel it after a year. It's not that you...
If you give the permit for the whole 50,000 in the first year, he could theoretically take all 50,000 away in the first year and have,
Then it's over and done with, and the neighbors are on with their lives.
maybe the neighbors aren't happy with 24/7 trucks. I agree
We
with Katie
wouldn't
that-
allow that.
Yeah, typically, hours of operation are,
That's what I'm going to ask you. So-
hours of operation are typically like 7:30 to 4:30, Monday through Friday. Saturday, usually 8 to 1 is kind of a typical, as far as the construction industry standards, that type of thing.
Mr. Proctor, you've run earth removal in Lunenburg before?
Yes, I have.
Have you ever had a violation?
I have not.
And how many were those, if you remember any of the amounts for those?
So on 2A where I live, my dad bought that property in 1972, and we removed 210,000 yards of gravel
Over how many?
over about 20 years. We had a parcel on Reservoir Road. We took out about 80,000 yards within 5 years. We had another parcel on Lancaster Ave that we took out roughly 20,000 yards. So the earth removal process is not new to me.
And he's not new to Lunenburg either,
Yeah.
so he's,
What I think my last couple of questions that I have for you. I always ask everyone when I was my time in the planning board. I asked everyone this question: is have you talked to the abutters?
I talked to Dale Erskine right here. She was at the conservation meeting. Her biggest concerns were what we're going to plant for the screenings, and there are existing trees there, and whether those existing trees were going to come down. I've known Dale forever. I basically said, obviously, before I take any trees, I'll have a site walk with you. You can tell me what you want to go, what you don't want to go, that type of thing. That's the only abutter that was at that conservation meeting. So to answer your question, that's it. As far as, I don't know this gentleman here.
I mean, I reasonably expect that someone tonight, or will stand up and say, or will email us, why do I have to live next to a construction zone for 3 years?
Gravel pit.
And how do we overcome that concern?
Well, I guess the biggest answer or scenario is ultimately something's going to happen to that property as far as development. Okay, whether, the earth removal process, goes through or not. So if I decide to develop that property, this is the elevation that we're looking for. So again, if, we wanted to build whatever, something there, we'd go in front of the planning board, the building department, we'd get a building permit, and then we'd remove all that earth anyhow. And we'd go through the same thing that we're talking about. We'd do all the stormwater management, everything. So that's why we're doing it in the right order. We're asking for an earth removal permit first, so that then the property can be developed.
I am going to open it up to the public. I will start by saying there was somebody who submitted a note to us who were not able to be here. This was Dale and Jerry Erskine of 1331 and 1335 Massachusetts Avenue. And they said, we will be out of town for your meeting on the earth removal at 1325 Mass Ave. Just a few concerns. One, the amount of earth removal. We've addressed that, 50,000 cubic yards at approximately 32 yards per truck is about 1,563 truckloads. I didn't do the math, that's their math, so approximately. They were concerned about the length of time to remove and noise and dust concerns. So can you talk about, well, I'll go to number 3. Will they be screening on site or just removing truckloads? So will you be screening there?
So typically, the only thing we screen is the topsoil, because when we have to put it back, it has to be screened. So as we put the soil back, we would screen the loom.
Okay, so what are your ways to mitigate dust concerns?
So typically, kind of the same thing. Because once we start removing, material, we're going to be down lower than her house anyhow, type of thing. The screening plant has a muffler on it. It's OSHA-approved screen and plant. You know, we screen loom. If there's dust conditions, we can always water. We have water on site. Dust control can be handled with watering and/or calcium flakes, so that's typical. We have... Standard practice. Yeah, it's standard practice. I mean, we have a gravel construction entrance that is typically rip-wrap, so the tires get cleaned before they go onto the state road. If we bring material on the state road, then we'd have to clean it up. So that's why you put the gravel entrance. That's standard practice for any site, you know, throughout.
And then their last concern was, were you going to be putting a plant barrier before the major work?
So again, when she was at the conservation meeting the other night, I just told her, obviously, we're not going to plant anything now, but as soon as spring comes, yes, we would get...
Before the work begins.
Yeah, we can get the plantings done as soon as the weather.
Okay.
I would like to start work prior to April, certainly.
Okay. If anybody would like to speak to this, please come to the front here. Just give your name and address, and then your concerns, comments.
Good evening. My name is Mark Resnikevich. I'm one of the abutters to this project, and I am very concerned.
What's the address?
68 Townsend Harbor. Okay. I'm sorry that this doesn't show my septic system, which is what I can tell right in this area here. You got drains here. And I'm concerned about my septic. You know, what is going to be put in place to protect that? It's very close to where these guys are going to be digging. Water's going to be draining. Dust, dirt is going to be unbelievable. To have that many heavy-duty pieces of equipment on that property is going to adversely affect my property. And, you know, he talks about dust mitigation. You know, is he going to come wash my house every week because it's going to be filthy from the dust and the dirt that's going to be sucked over onto my property, my house? You know, our windows open in the summer, all that dust and dirt flowing inside of our house. Just the rumbling of that equipment. I mean, it's going to be shaking my house. And yeah, that's a very pastoral hill. I'm sure you know where it is. It's beautiful. You go up and down the street, you see that hill. There used to be horses on it. It was a beautiful piece of property. Now, I know this is minor, but they're going to turn it into a strip mine. You know, it's going to look like something off the Gold Rush TV series. I just, it bothers me. And I'm worried about the effects it's going to have on my septic and my house. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Adams, you did address some of the things that were a concern of mine, and I appreciate you bringing those things up. But 3 years of this, you know, we're living with this for 3 years. The rumblings, the rattlings, the shaking, the dirt, the dust, that's a long time. And we're right on that property line. And again, no one has addressed what safety is going to be put in place for my septic system. Because it's there, it's not shown on this. Maybe the gentleman from Ducharme and Dillis can point it out or mention what the plan is, but it's a major concern.
Mr. Chairman, I ask a question?
You may.
So, first, I hear you. I understand your concern tonight. As I was reading through our notes prior to tonight and coming up with my questions, you know, I think I was trying to envision being one of the property owners around here, and I think you've really vocalized what I think most people will be reasonably concerned by. My question for you is, there's, with any kind of property development, there's what I like to call reasonable inconvenience. So how can you, and I know this is not a plan that you like, but how can you be more reasonably inconvenienced? I know that's kind of a tough question to ask, but what can be done to make this not so bad? What is that you want to see out of this?
I'd like to see the time of development shortened from 3 years to you know, I don't know what's humanly possible. I'm not in the business,
Yeah.
okay? These guys are, and I know they know what they're talking about, but, you know, 3 years of that disruption. We bought that property, we lived there because of the peace and quiet that that area afforded us. And, you know, now it's going to get turned upside down. There's no way to avoid it. And, you know, I couldn't just sit home tonight and let someone else worry about it. I mean, that's my life. That's my wife's life.
Yeah.
And again, we're there, we chose Lunenburg. We were going to live in Groton, but we chose Lunenburg because of the peace, the quiet. Taxes were a little lower at the time, not anymore. But anyways, you know, we love where we live. And there's a lot of wetlands up there. There's a lot of wildlife up there. There's deer, turkey. We had a moose in our yard. And, you know, we love to see that wildlife. They start seeing these trucks come in that area, they're going to disappear, you know? And that's another sad point.
Okay, so you mentioned shortening the time of development. I hear you on that one. You know, with the land being zoned commercial,
we had a feeling that he was going to be building something there. My neighbors and I, we talked, and we said, this is preemptive. This is the start of something. And
yeah, that's how it appears.
Yes. Is that a strip mall? You know, what's going to go in there? Don't be fooled by, oh, we're just going to take the dirt. No, you're not. You're going to build something there.
Yeah.
And again, that's our quality of life, depending on what gets built there.
Yeah, every developer has different stages. Sometimes, you know, their interest is only at the very beginning of it, to get a project kind of starting, then they look to sell. So that, you know, I don't want to put words in Mr. Proctor's mouth, but he very well may not have a plan for what to do with the property in 3 or 4 years. He may have a vision of what it can be, and along the way, may find a buyer who can come along and kind of take it to wherever they want to take it to.
I would bet you money that that's what's going to happen.
That's what developers usually
I can
do.
bet you money they're going to build there.
All right. Okay. I don't have any other questions. Thank
Any
you.
other public, please, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening. Clifford
evening.
Smith, 70 Townsend Harbor Road. We're neighbors. I originally got a letter from the engineers. I went down to the town. I had a letter that said in excess of 10 truckloads, cubic yards. 10 cubic yards was my letter. Now we're at 50,000 cubic yards. And we're talking about the roadway. There was concern about the 1,500 truckloads. I think you did the math. Somebody did the math. You did the math. 1,500. Yet, how about, now that's out on the road. How about the bulldozers, the loaders, the graders? Now, Mark and I, which was the man that just left, we are on the same level as the top of that field. Exactly. Now you're going to pull out 50,000 cubic yards. That's 3 by 3 by 3. That's, my original letter that I got looked like 2 cellar holes. Gee, you can handle that. 10 minimum. What do you do when you pull this all out? You're going to slope that? You're going to wall it? What are you going to do after you pull this out? You're going to grade it up to our level? I don't think so. I don't think anybody's going to. You're going to put it back? How are you going to pull that out of there and leave? You can't do it. It can't be done. And I've lived there 14 years, and if this goes, so's that house. I will not stay here and live through 1,500 trailer loads, truckloads of gravel with bulldozers, scrapers, graders, and everything else that's going to hit that place. And I don't believe there's one of you up here that would sit still and live next to that. So I don't have anything else to say, except that you get a letter that says minimum 10 cubic yards. And then I walk in here and I hear 50,000. That's some difference. That is a huge difference. why does that take place? I don't believe, and one other thing. I go down to the engineers and I talk to them down there, and they tell me, oh, no, no problem with that. We've done perk tests. Perk tests? Where'd you do the perk test? That's the engineering company. I think the young man's name was Jack, or John, I'm not sure. I'm so ripped at this point, that he did perk tests. You can do perk tests. You're taking out 50,000 yards. After the perk test, you can't do them before. So there's too much here, too much smoke. And I'm very serious. I could not sit at the tail end of my life and listen to 1,500 truckloads of gravel. And I respect the man who owns it. It's his land. He can do what he wants with it. But don't do it at my expense. Please, don't let him do it at our expense. Do something else with it. You put a road in there, put some homes in there. That'll give you some of your money back. Thanks for listening. I am rip, but
Do you, sir, or does the applicant, do you have the letter that was sent to the homeowners?
I do. I have it with me. You want it?
Yes, please.
I have a question while we're waiting for that.
I think the confusion is.
I think I know what it is. I
The
just want to
bylaw
see it.
says if
Right.
it's in excess of 10 yards, you have to apply for an earth
I understand,
removal
and I
permit.
think
That's what the letter
I
says.
believe that's
because
what it is, too.
If I want to take out 10 yards, I don't need to get an earth removal permit. But in excess of 10 is the bylaw.
So my question is, I had the feeling that it would all be flattened. It sounds like these people live up here and it's gonna be like cut.
Yeah. I mean, with
Level
these-
off in the middle. It's the average grade exists in the middle. They're cutting about, at the highest peak, cutting about 19 feet to the lowest point. At the bottom end of the page, not cutting anything, but it's an
But
average
where
of
these
cutting.
people
Do you
live.
have a side view?
Yes, if I may, I just want to flip to, I have cross-sections of the,
Please.
of the cut.
Yeah, please.
It's in here. It's right in the application.
Before you continue, the letter that was given, and I thought that was the case, so the current bylaw says that anybody removing more than 10 cubic yards, that's when you need a permit. So the fact that they were removing clearly more than 10, that wasn't an indication of what they were removing. That was an indication of what the bylaw states they need a permit for, anything greater than that.
Okay, and I respect that. I also was at the engineering down in Bolton on the Main Street, and they told me they were doing perk tests. Now, I'd like somebody to explain to me how to do a perk test. They do 50,000 yards.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what we did is we didn't do perk tests, we did test holes. So we dug test holes to see what the soil conditions were, and we also dug test holes to see if there was any. Well, I apologize if Jamie said something wrong. So the site is serviced by sewer, so we don't have to put septic systems on that site because it's serviced by sewer. So we would never do perk tests in soil because it doesn't matter about the perk. We did test holes to determine if there was ledge, is basically what it is, in soil conditions, so.
So did you show the grade?
Yeah, would you mind?
Sorry, first I flipped back to show the locations of the test pits that were excavated by the applicant. Those were done throughout the parcel. There was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 test pits done to confirm both ledge and the quality of the material at this parcel. So here, to here, here, and then down closer towards the wetlands and the property line here. Now, with regard to the section, these are 2 cross sections through the parcel. They're running east to west. So they run from the wetland side.
Looking at the property, right? East to west.
Yes, east to west. If you're standing on 2A looking at the parcel, that would be left to right. So running through the parcel, the orange dashed line is existing grade through the parcel. The green line is proposed grade. So at cross-section A here, and I'll flip back to the grading plan to give you reference as to where that is. We're This is the property line. We're meeting existing grade approximately 30 feet away from the property line. We're staying out of that 30-foot no-touch buffer in the wetlands. Cutting for the stormwater management area. And then this is the wedge of soil that's removed with the 3-on-1 slope coming up to the vegetated strip along the, forgive me, I forget the abutter's name. The Erskines. So I'm gonna.
Where do these people live?
These people live, and I'll flip back.
Do you have any plans that show their homes?
No, though, I would have to check and see.
Because there are, one abutter's, structures are shown, but then I think the gentlemen that are here are very close to this site, but they're...
The abutters that were closely adjacent are shown. The parcels, the homes are, I want to say they're off sheet. It is right there, so
they would
it's
be
up
on
there.
the sheet. I would like to have seen them.
It's not on the sheet. They're not, look,
I mean,
if you
in
look at
terms
the
of their
GIS,
proximity.
this is the parcel. This is 68 Townsend Harbor, this is 70 Townsend Harbor. That's about 200 feet from the house to the property line. Or to the,
That doesn't show the slope, you can't tell.
well, the top corner here is elevation 224, something like that, so he's obviously higher than that. So he'll look down on it, but no water's gonna leave this site and hit their property, they're above it.
I'm just
Correct.
thinking of the construction and dust, not like the...
Not above, but our septic is at the bottom of our driveway, right next to that property.
Correct, but what they're proposing, when you look at the grading plan, they're still much lower than your septic, and if anything, they'd be increasing the drainage away from your property, the way this
Correct.
setting it up.
We will have a net decrease of overall runoff leaving the property, and it's being directed this way towards the intersection of 2A and Townsend Harbor Road, so in the opposite direction of your parcel. So if anything, as far as stormwater impacts go, it would reduce any potential impact to your property by leaving the site the way it is.
What kind of a guarantee could you give
Runoff
him?
goes.
Well, they dug the test pit kind of in that neighborhood, 15 feet down, and they didn't hit any groundwater. They didn't hit any groundwater in any of the test pits that they did.
What if this gentleman's septic system was affected?
How is it going to affect it if it's not increasing the water onto the property? This is exactly what he's got right there.
You can see he had a soil test for 15 feet down.
We have that plan on our little computers here, and it says at each one of those points,
So
how
if
far
I
they
may-
dug, what type of soil was there, if they hit bedrock, and if they hit water.
In the notes.
So I'm just flipping to the set on the plans, on the table here. Yes, sir. This is the existing conditions plan. So we have your parcel here, and you are,
Right there. I'm right next to him.
you're right next to him, yes. So the test pits that were excavated by the applicant, pits 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We have
How deep were they?
these ones 15, 15, 15, 15. We have 15-foot deep test pits. No refusal. At the bottom here, groundwater was at 12 feet, which would put groundwater at approximately 405, 404, 403. So for the elevation 403, that would put it at 391, which would be significantly below your parcel, as well as below the final finished grade.
This is your buffer, 20 feet?
Yes, so this buffer is 20 feet along the outside of the parcel. There are also, this is the 100-foot wetland buffer, 50 and 30. So along this parcel, along this edge, we're staying outside of the 30-foot no-touch buffer.
So tell me that when this whole thing began,
trying to be patient with it.
Your
yeah.
office or whatever, you looked at everything.
Okay.
You were aware that my septic system was right there.
At that time, I was not, however, I did speak to your wife about that.
Okay. So now that
Yes.
you're aware of my septic
Yes.
system, you're still assuring me that nothing is going to happen to my septic system?
Yes.
And Mr. Proctor is going to be building me a new one.
We are excavating down and away.
$40,000.
I understand that, yes.
Yeah. Okay, and where is the access for all these trucks? Where are they going into the property?
So initially, for the beginning of the project, they'll be utilizing the existing gravel driveway. The ultimate plan, we're securing a MassDOT curb cut, so that they'll be using this entrance here.
They should, their information should be on this.
We're not ignoring you.
No.
No.
Believe me,
No,
if I-
we just made a comment up here.
If I wanted to be acknowledged, believe me, I would have no problem. So the question, can you both tell me your addresses? Because I'm looking at all the lot lines here on the assessor's map.
I'm at 68 Townsend.
And you? 70. 68 and 70, okay.
No, comment that we were making on this side was that this is why it's so important for people to meet with the butters before they, present plans to get approval. Because a lot of times it just answers all these questions, and it's a much better position in general when you can come in and say, I've talked to the neighbors, and these are the accommodations that, we made to what we wanted to do. I mean, sometimes you can't win everyone over. Someone who's just opposed to it is just going to be opposed to it no matter what you say. But sometimes there's little things that people care about,
This is a lot.
And I totally respect that, but with all due respect, are we supposed to have conversations with the butters prior to meetings? Because like zoning board, it's against the regulations that you can't talk to anybody about
It's
a
a
zoning.
public
So
hearing,
whenever we do any project, are we supposed to talk to the butters all the time prior to?
It would have been a good idea in this case.
You can.
But are we supposed to?
No.
I mean, I understand it's a good idea, okay,
You
just
can
like
certainly,
it.
you're not required to answer them, obviously.
Yeah.
It would be, I mean,
Yeah.
they're obviously, the public hearing is for everyone's sake, so.
Right.
But you're not required to answer to them.
No,
Okay.
but it's strongly encouraged.
Yeah, yeah.
No, and I understand that, but again, zoning, you're not supposed to.
Well, that's.
Because zoning's always like, you can't have conversations with about any projects or, that type of thing. You're not supposed to theoretically, so.
Dillis was very open, very cordial. They would take our
Would you
phone
mind-
calls.
Yeah, you need to use a microphone.
They were very cordial, they were very professional. They answered all my wife's questions. I believe I spoke to you or someone, and probably at the time didn't ask all the right questions because I was just overwhelmed with concern, and as you think about things, you sleep on them, all these questions came up. I didn't even think about the dirt, the dust, and the noise until like today. Like, oh my God, I didn't even think about that. And Cliff helped to remind me about that. So, there has been discussion with myself, Cliff, and Ducharme and Dillis, and they have answered, most of or all the questions that we asked that we could think of up to this point, so.
How far is your house from the property line of this property?
Well, my driveway goes, see, it's hard to put this in perspective. This is Townsend Harbor.
Further down, Townsend Harbor.
Okay, see what I mean? And we swing up, there's a wooden fence that was there for the horses, and our property begins just on the other side of that wooden fence. Then there's our driveway that splits off Cliff's house and then my house up a little further. It's, the driveway to the fence is maybe 50 feet, something like that.
That's the property line.
This is the
Again.
property line. That's what I'd measured to. And the other guy's over
150
here.
feet from the property line, okay.
To what, the driveway?
This is 68 Townsend Harbor.
From your
This is
property or from your house? Okay.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Chair, if I
Mrs. Adams.
may, one thing is the parcel here, it's a beautiful parcel. I I've always loved the little house. It is a nice setting, but the only way for, in my opinion, a person to protect something is to own it themselves. So I'm not against economic development or people's private property rights in terms of the lot. If I wanted to see it stay exactly as it was, it would need to be mine. So that's not what this is about. I focus on what our intent here is to study the earth removal process. So for me, the highest concern is while we give one person a permit to do something, what is its impact on other people? In the past, as we've become more skilled at earth removal permitting, which the town bestowed on us to continue to do at town meeting, is we had so much positive input from Gary Rhodes when he was with us that I really think helped educate us and inform us. So I'd be saying that I don't feel comfortable issuing the permit tonight without reaching out for further input from people a little bit more skilled in these type of day-to-day operations so that they can put it in perspective and to scale it if it's similar to other things that are happening or not. So I would really like to reach out for a little bit of input from some of our town professionals, in particular our building commissioner, no longer Gary, but Casey, or to see if they had any input. There is a letter from land use, but it's fairly generic, so I would like the opportunity to ask a few questions before giving a permit of this magnitude in a way that there are residents that are concerned, and I think we need to learn a little bit more about what we are. It's not about whether or not there's going to be development, it's just about the scale of what is appropriate and how it'll impact people. So I would like to probably extend the hearing, or if we could take a pause and collect our thoughts on what else we need to know. One is that I wish this plan did show the other abutters, so we would have a better scale and understanding of who's impacted by this project visually. I think that really helps. And then we also already know that the plan doesn't designate the fact that there's no crushing. So that would have to be added. So we can't, without adding conditions, in my mind, permit the plan without saying no crushing. Maybe we want to say no screening operations on site, just removal. But that, I think we need more input in terms of what is construction or earth removal that's normal on a site versus what becomes more of a gravel pit and a consistent operational kind of thing.
And
So-
also, does 50,000 cubic yards need to be removed? I mean, that's a lot of material.
No, it's really not. Are you able to say what the average cut is of the site? I mean, I know, I get an idea from looking at it myself, but can you describe what the average cut of the soil is?
How big is the site?
Little over 5 acres.
A little over 6 acres. I want to.
Is it 5.7 something or?
5.9 acres. We did this math at the Conservation Commission. Was it? 4 acres of, 4 acres of disturbance when it's done. Cut, going back to the cross sections. We would have about a maximum cut of, this is for about 426 down to about 410, so about 16 feet.
Yeah, that's the maximum, but
Was the
I'm
max-
talking about the average.
Right.
Because in some points it's zero, so.
Correct, in some parts
It's gonna be
it's
an
zero,
average of
some
less than-
parts it's a little bit of fill in the final condition.
Right, my guess from looking at it was gonna be less than 10-foot average of taking soil down. They're not creating the Grand Canyon, they're not even digging a hole, they're making a flat spot on the hill.
But it's not Keating's, it's residential area.
It's commercial.
No, it's not. It's a commercial property. Don't lose sight of the fact that it's a commercial property. As the applicant said, and I think accurately so, if somebody had come in and say, I want to do something at a commercial property, and it went to the planning board, this all could be removed at that point with a project in mind. He's asking for it to be removed beforehand. That's the difference.
I think the difference becomes for the abutters, the amount of time that they abut a site. So a construction site has a beginning and an end and a completion, and then it's gone. And I think it's the ongoing nature.
But you just said you didn't want 1,500 trucks in 1 year, which is what would happen in a construction.
But our responsibility is to issue an earth removal permit, and I'm just saying I would like more input before we do that. We've, in the past, been given a lot of input from professionals, none of which we are.
And also, the abutters might like to know what it's gonna be.
So
They might like it if they
That
went
might
to
be
the
something they
planning
would
board.
like to know, I understand that, but if there is no plan to put something else there, but the plan in front of us is to remove earth, our job is to say, is that allowable and permissible, and can we deny it with some of the things that are in the, is it unreasonable to get 50,000 cubic yards of fill out of there?
So
It seem unreasonable out of a 6-acre parcel of which they're going to disturb 4.
It seems unreasonable to me.
Because of your experience with what 50,000 cubic yards is?
My read of
Looking at
this
the land.
board is that there are two of you who are, there's one, anyway, is that we're kind of split. So my opinion on this is I'm inclined to support the permit request. However, I have several questions as well that I think can only be answered if we postpone the hearing. I think that what they're trying to do is consistent with the use on commercial property. I think it's difficult to swallow. I live nearby, but it's something that I can swallow. My only concerns really are when we get to our reasons for denial. I have a question for our town council about if this list is all-inclusive or it's an or list. Because the way it reads, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if we have to find all 3 conditions exist or if we have to find that only one of them does. So that's not a question that can be answered tonight. The way that it's worded says no permit for earth removal shall be issued as such removal will, A, B, C. It doesn't say.
It's or. It's any one of the 3.
Okay. So I think that I want to, I would feel better if I spoke to town council. I also would feel better if I spoke to some members of the planning board just to get their view on compliance with the permit they're asking for in front of the planning board. Because if the plans then change, to me, that affects the decision we make here too. But
Is there a plan in front of the planning board?
Yes.
yes.
Stormwater management.
The stormwater management portion of it.
There's a stormwater management plan with regard to what's being proposed here for the basin and the disturbance under the state general permit requirements.
And just so you can appreciate this, we tried to give this permitting authority to the planning board so that it could all happen together in one
Yes.
place, and the town denied that.
I didn't support that. I think there should be
I mean,
separate.
as far as that, we can certainly make our license contingent on it. And in fact, it almost has to be contingent on the planning board approving a stormwater management plan. So I don't think that should be an obstacle tonight if we wanted to approve it or not.
But I think that I mean, if we approve it tonight, the vote would be 3-2, and I'd feel a lot better if it was 4-1 or 5-0. And I think that we can get rid of these concerns, and I think we can bring everyone on board with just postponing another couple. I mean, does that pose a problem for you as the developer if while you are before another board, if we ask you to come back in maybe 3 weeks?
Yes, because I would really like to get started on this project. I have jobs for this next week, if possible. The material coming out of here. Ms. Adams, with all due respect, I always hate when I come to meetings and someone says to me, I want to get more professionals' opinions, that type of thing. This plan says Ducharme and Dillis. One of these days, it's going to say Ducharme, Dillis, and Proctor, okay? Because I just gave this company a lot of money to come up with this plan. They are professionals. There's 5 professional engineers in their company that do this stuff all the time, every day. So they didn't just throw this plan together and say, yeah, this is fine. I mean, everything is done according to standards of engineers. So,
understand.
and again,
I'm
we go
sitting
in
up
front of the
here
conservation,
thinking
and the
of-
conservation didn't have a problem with anything, okay, other than the DEP hadn't given us a file number yet, so that got continued just for that, okay? So we're gonna go in front of stormwater management on Monday night, and I guarantee they're not gonna have a problem with it, because
Mr.
everything
Chair, if I may.
that they did. So I just feel like we do have professionals who take care of these things, and that's the gentleman that I hired. I mean, that's
Chair,
where they
if I
come
may.
up with these plans, so, and I think the abutter spoke, and he said his concerns, and I respect his concerns, I certainly do. But again, I mean, his house is 150 feet away from the property line. It's a long ways,
No blasting here, right? This is just,
That's correct. It's just loaded on a truck and off it
So-
goes. There's no blasting, there's no ledge, all the
Mr.
test
Chair,
borings.
if I may,
We did, there's no ledge on that property.
I wasn't questioning the professionalism of Ducharme and Dillis or the correct analysis of everything associated with this site and this parcel. I'm sitting here thinking of the impact of a permit that I may give on the abutters and understanding the impact of this amount of earth removal for particulate matter in the air, the dust. 150 feet is not far away for that type of excavating to have a huge impact on the house, and you know that. There's nothing professional about that. If you live 150 feet away from an excavation project of this magnitude, you will be covered in dust. Your cars will be covered in dust. And so I always feel my role here is to not just think about the outcome for one person in Lunenburg, but the outcome for everybody involved in the yay or nay of any situation. And in this case, there are two abutters here. There's a letter from an abutter that had all the same concerns they had, and I think that's 3 of the 4 residential abutters to the property. So I'm looking at everybody. And when I say professional opinion, I mean I want earth removal input from somebody hired and associated by the town, because we represent the town and the town needs, where this is the private, this is the municipal perspective. So that's a professional opinion from one side, and I was seeking professional input from our building commissioner. I think that's a respectable and normal thing in our role to seek input from our own hired professionals, and it doesn't mean that I'm questioning the professionalism of anybody else. So I don't really appreciate that perspective. I'm just trying to think, if I say yes to an earth removal permit, how does that impact the abutters? And I do, one of the conditions is how does it impact the health and the environment of people around? And this is a massive digging operation, and I think particulate matter does have a huge impact on people's health.
It's very close to the school.
I will say your definition of a massive project is quite different than mine. Just in my own
That's okay.
in my own experience of projects that I've
Well, it
worked on,
goes
this
from a-
is quite small.
Yeah,
It's
especially a 5
massive
acre-
for the abutters. It's a
5
big
acre lot.
change. But I just want to postpone, like Michael said, because, I mean, we're at, I think, a 7:10 appointment at 8:40, and I just don't feel ready. And so I think it makes sense to
Before I
continue.
entertain anything, any potential adjournment of this and putting it off to another date, what exact information are you looking to learn? Can you articulate what information you're looking to learn from who that would sway your opinion one way or another?
Gary Rhodes always gave us a great amount of input on his opinion, because that was part of my life's work. Doesn't include earth removal, and so somebody from town who can give us their perspective. There's a little bit of it in some letters, like from Adam, but not a lot of input. We often have gotten that in the past, so I wouldn't feel comfortable not having input from Adam or Casey. And really, what I like to be consistent. Where else has this happened in town? Is this a normal amount of impact for abutters to have to endure? And can we scale it differently so that there's a compromise? I just want more input from our building department.
Is there anybody else who has not spoken that would like to speak? Mr. Passios.
Dave Passios, 56 Whiting Street. Trying to decide who I'm speaking as, because I'm on a couple of boards in town.
Speaking as Dave.
Yeah.
If you belong to a body and you haven't conferred with that body, you're speaking as you.
Right, so I'm speaking as a citizen, but I do have a question. Through you, Mr. Chair, I'd like to know from the engineer if he was aware of the septic system very close to the property line. Would there been a change in grading and/or offset in that area? And also, it concerns me as a citizen that the abutters' septic systems and/or, and I'm assuming they're on town water, but not necessarily, that their wells are not located along the boundaries of these properties.
So with regard to the septic system location, this would not have changed my design. Just flipping back to the grading plan. We are cutting, this is 20 feet. So this excavation starts to cut down and ends approximately, I would say, 60 feet away from our property line. So we're heading down and away from the septic system. If this condition was reversed and we were directing water off our site toward the septic system, I would absolutely have concern with that and would have had further storm water controls to mitigate that. But the way the site is designed, under the existing conditions, there's a ridge coming down the property like this. So this top corner of the parcel sends stormwater down onto these abutting properties. By cutting this, all the stormwater is being now directed into the basin, into this wetland network. So there's nothing with this design, had I known that there was a septic system at this location, that I would change.
To your question earlier, Mr. Chair, I think that this plan is going to have conditions on it. I think that my read of the board is that there's support for it, but I would withhold my vote today so that I can do a little bit more, spend a little bit more time writing out some potential conditions to help minimize the impact on the neighbors after consulting with other plans that have been presented to the town before. So I move to continue this public hearing to the 4th of February.
Second.
Any discussion?
I would just say, we have a discussion about Economic Development Committee later tonight, and if you want to do anything about economic development, we can't try to form a committee or streamline the process in the office or anything else when it's boards who come in and handle a meeting like this. When you have a professional set of plans, a professional engineer certifying it, and all the information in front of it, and it just gets handled like the way we do.
With all due respect, we're just earth removal permitting, so it could just be a dirt ditch. We're not really standing in the way of a project with our thoughts. It's just, it could be left just as an excavated site in terms of our role here.
This is exactly the reason why people don't want to work in town. Exactly.
I just thinking of abutters.
Enough. Do not shout out from the audience, please. If you want something, you feel free to come up, but do not shout out from the audience.
You don't live there, and you keep saying it's a small project. How can you call that a small project? In comparison to what?
I'm an architect. I work with civil engineers and projects all across the state of all different sizes. This is quite small. It's been handled quite well from these plans that my professional experience. So I feel like I can speak to the size and scope of the project and how it's been handled.
Okay, so what is it, 15,000 cubic? 50,000. So what's big to you?
All right, this is not a useful conversation. What's big to, this is not a matter of size. We have a thing before us. Larger projects have been in town, smaller projects have been in town. I personally agree with Mr. McQuaid that I have enough information here. I mean, the applicant has had several locations in town of which he has had no violations, no problems, no complaints. We're talking about an area that will be done with no blasting, no rock crushing on site. He'll take care of erosion and with the basin. I think everything has been addressed. I don't know what information the members of this board think they're going to get additionally that's going to sway their information. So I'm against the continuation of the hearing personally.
I hear what you're saying, Damon. I think, you and I have, as you're an architect, I work in property management, I'm also a contractor, so I can relate to where the applicant's coming from on this. I mean, my view is that this body has to be more than just a rubber stamp, that we have to be thoughtful in our decisions, and I think that for the applicant, they've heard that there is majority support in favor of issuing a permit. I think what's being asked is that we wait 2 more weeks, only because we do not have a regularly scheduled meeting for next week, that we wait 2 more weeks to write better conditions to go with this permit. I don't think that 2 weeks is bottom line going to decide if this product's going to go forward or not, because I think they're hearing that there's support for it to go forward. And it's going to push their product back 2 weeks, but I think that gives us enough time to properly account for the concerns of the abutters and whether or not anything can be mitigated during this process. But otherwise, I do think that the plan is consistent with the direction that we would like, that the town has already voted to move in, which is to zone this land commercial for commercial development. So that, to me, is a settled issue. It's commercial property, which means it needs to be developed to be commercial property. But I'm just not ready today to come up with the conditions for it.
Well, just so we don't have a split board, I am not here in 2 weeks. So if it gets continued, it has to be in 3 weeks.
And
we will have a split board in 2 weeks if you're not here, because I read that we're 2-2. We're 3-2 right now.
why can't we write conditions tonight? What would you do besides set hours of operation, screening, and what else?
Exactly.
What else could you possibly want to do?
So why don't we?
I'm just used to input from the building department, and I don't know why we can't request that. It seems very logical to do.
To influence what part of this? You still haven't given me a criteria, a
Information
statistic.
gathering, learning.
Say it's
perspective.
big or not? I mean, what do you want him to say that's going to make you feel good about this?
Just their perspective. Gary was phenomenal at giving his perspective. I haven't met Casey before, but I feel like, we went through a lot of earth removal permitting when Jamie was here and you weren't chair, and there was a real educational curve where the board wasn't educated on earth removal permitting. It's part of what led us and the planning board to work together to move it in that direction. But now that it's still ours, I'm always trying to learn more and think more. And we have a building department and we pay people to be on it, and they have a lot of perspective that I don't have. I would just like the opportunity to hear their opinion. Just like an animal control officer giving opinion on a dog case. They're far more, or a police officer to give opinion on a when we do the liquor store stings. It's like their perspective as employees of the town is just valuable to me to information gather. That's what we had a lot of from Gary. We learned a lot from him when we were permitting over the last couple of years. And I would just like the opportunity for professional input from our municipal employees who work in our building department. We have a building department. They're not being heard here as part of this. I value their opinion.
Mr. Proctor.
Yeah, I just wanted to say one thing. Gary enlightened everybody because he went out and did all the inspections and found all kinds of violations. Typical protocol for the earth removal permit is not necessarily getting the opinion of the building inspector. The building inspector is supposed to inspect once the earth removal permit starts. So basically, he's supposed to go out, and if the site has a sheer 10-foot cliff that's dangerous, then he's supposed to say the applicant should be cutting that 3-to-1. Or if he goes out and does his inspections and areas haven't been seeded, then he says the applicant is in violation. That's typical of the earth removal process. The building inspector is supposed to go out, inspect them every year at the renewals, and then tell you if there's any deficiencies, is typically. But again, there's no deficiencies on this plan because we haven't started it. Right,
Nothing
so,
to inspect.
that's right.
I just want our municipal perspective from,
I hear you. I hear what you're asking for. I agree. That I understand what you're asking for. So, did we have...
For dust control, I mean, Damon is asking, asked a good question of what are those conditions, and so I have a question for the applicant, but I see gentlemen.
Sir.
I just got one issue, would be if you're considering the rock crusher thing to put into the agreement, starting time, ending time.
No, the applicant has said there will be no rock crushing. He has already eliminated that.
No, removal, the start of the equipment,
Right, that's what we're going over
The
next.
startup of the
Yep.
day.
Yep.
Is it 5 days, 6 days? Is it 7 to 3:30? Is it 8 to 4? What are the hours
Okay.
they'll be allowed to operate? That's all.
Yep.
Thank you.
I think we had a motion in a second, and I don't know if we're still stuck in
Well,
discussion.
I have to withdraw my motion because Mr. Alonso won't be here, and I definitely don't want this to get stuck in a 2-2. Our meeting next week, that we're having but not having,
We are having, if we're having.
is,
Well, that's an open forum. That's a public forum that we're having a workshop. And I won't be there either, so.
are you in a position to be able to call in on the 4th? If we put this at the very beginning of the agenda?
No.
I'm not going to be here next week either. I'll be in Virginia.
What about, when's the next one, the 10th,
We have the 4th and then the 11th.
11th? Move it to the 11th.
Yeah, for the long-term impact on the abutters and just, I mean, and I'm more concerned at this point about approaching 9 PM at night and just, this has gone well beyond, I mean, there's a lot of other business tonight. I just think it's appropriate where we have a lot of uncertainty and in my mind, a lot of work to do. Putting a few weeks into this and taking everybody's input into consideration, I think postponing it until we can accomplish it is just a normal part of the process.
It is not.
I did want to say, as far as dust control goes on the site, that is covered in the stormwater permit that has been submitted to planning board in the stormwater pollution prevention plan package.
Would
as
you
well
submit
as-
it as part of ours as well, so it would be in conjunction with our?
It
We
would
don't
be-
have that, do we?
No, because it was part of the planning board, so the town has it, and it would be part of all of the permits issued by the town for this.
Can we get a copy of that?
Yeah, it's at the planning board office.
Public-
But it's not
a public
attached to
document.
our, it's not attached to this. It doesn't mandate in here that there's dust control in
So
our
what-
part of it.
Can you describe to us quickly what your dust control?
Yes,
State-
the plan for dust control, as the applicant stated previously, is water and/or calcium chloride flakes to be spread on disturbed areas to manage the dust. It's as needed, as requested, as directed.
As requested by who?
If there are complaints about dust, it would be as requested by the town. However, it's in the applicant's best interest to act before the town gets involved with any kind of disciplinary measures on the site.
But that information isn't associated to this permit, and it should be, or we have no jurisdiction to ask for it because we aren't, it's not included in this, it's included in another board's
Portions of it
information.
wasn't included in the erosion control plans. So we do discuss dust control measures under the temporary measures on sheet C 3.1.
Mr. Jeffries, you mentioned that your feeling on this is that we're at 3-2. I would concur with that. The point is, what do we gain? I don't see that the building inspector, who I don't even know is the appropriate body to ask for information about this, but let's just say,
commissioner.
I have no idea what he would tell me that would make me change my mind and be in disapproval of this. And so, if the other two are not, it doesn't matter. I'd love it to be 5-0, but it really doesn't matter. If we're going to wait 3 weeks and it's still going to be 3-2, then let's do 3-2 tonight.
I think you're assuming that I'm against it, which I have a problem with to begin with, because I'm not against issuing earth removal permits. I just want to set conditions, quantities, and amounts that reflect what the professionals from the municipal point of view sees as appropriate. And so I'm not against the earth removal permit. I just want to set it up so that it's a compromise and it's reflective of creating the best outcome for everybody involved, including the abutters. That's why, in terms of, we know that the 50,000 was said to be over 3 years. Well, how do we construct it so it reflects what would be permissible for 1 year? I think it needs to all be in line with, if we grant what is said to be done in 3 years, but we say it can be done in 1 year, then it can be done in 1 year, and that's a more massive operation than the abutters should maybe typically endure.
I believe one of the conditions could be that we could limit the quantity that can be taken out in 1 year.
And I think we need to work on the conditions at another meeting, because I feel like we've gone far beyond the time that I feel is appropriate to allocate this tonight. I think it's appropriate to work on it at a future meeting where we can clear our minds, collect our thoughts, and come up with a positive outcome for everybody.
There's always a better deal.
There is?
Yes.
Haste
Okay.
makes waste.
Wow. A stitch in time, I'll just throw that out there. Okay. I'll entertain a motion. Again, I
There's a
think
motion
we're...
on the table, right?
You rescinded.
I
Okay.
withdrew my motion.
So I would make a motion that we postpone the hearing until the February 11th meeting, and I would like to invite the building commissioner and the land use director to answer any further questions of the abutters and/or the board.
Second.
Any further discussion? I'm against the motion, but I will take a vote.
This motion is us inviting the,
No, it's continuing this hearing till,
February
for 3
11th.
weeks, so we can hear from the land use director, who I believe has no earth removal experience, and a building commissioner that I'm not sure has any land removal experience.
The land use director, I'm just thinking of abutters and getting, I don't think it should be scoffed at.
You don't have to explain it. You
I'm just
made
trying
the-
to
the motion
respect
is
the
the motion.
abutters who are here looking for our help. I'm not speaking for myself, I'm trying to speak on behalf of other people, and so I feel like laughing at my request is laughing at the abutters, 3 of whom who have serious concerns.
I'm not laughing at either. I'm not laughing at either. You don't have the sole responsibility of representing abutters either. You know, we're representing the town. There's lots of people in the town. I certainly am sensitive to the abutters, but it's also a commercial property with a properly engineered design. And what we're talking about now is just, to me, just wasting time for no reason.
Mr. Chair, in terms of wasting time, what is the problem with giving time to it so that we can put
You
together
can turn everything
conditions?
around. I'd like to take a vote on this. Do we have a first and a second, a motion and a second to
We do.
continue the hearing to February 11th?
Which is a very normal thing to continue hearings.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed?
no.
No.
No. I would attend a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that we accept the earth permit as requested with the following conditions. That the time of operation will begin no earlier than 8 a.m. and end no later than 4:30 p.m. That the dust control measures will include the use of water and calcium chloride flakes. That's second condition. Third condition, that there will be no rock crushing on the site. Fourth condition, that only the top 2 feet of soil may be screened on site.
I would second that, and I just propose a minor edit to the conditions.
Yes.
Days of the week, I would exclude Saturday and Sunday, so just be weekdays.
Weekdays only.
And again, I don't know if the abutters cared to weigh in, if they'd like to get up early or have them done earlier in the day, but I think you allotted an appropriate time for the amount of day. It's just whether or not anyone has a preference to earlier or later. I'd be interested if the abutters cared either way.
I would concur with all these. I think weekday is appropriate. I think because of the nature of where that is tucked in with residents around, I think excluding Saturday is, I think, a reasonable request.
Not as a condition, but I think that there's an underlying expectation that as these trucks enter and leave the property and leave debris on roadways, that they will also make efforts to help clean up our roads. Whether that's a dumping of water or whatever is necessary, so that way we don't have trails of mud going down the street.
Yes, and that is a condition of the MassDOT permit as well, so.
I have a question about these conditions in terms of where it's been heavily identified that 50,000 cubic feet is a 3-year goal. Would you do the quantity by a third?
I think we have to, my opinion is that we should, I'm concerned about 50,000. I don't think it's possible. I mean, I think that what they've come here tonight and have been very clear about is that this is a investment for them. They spent $400,000 on this property, that this is going to cost them quite a bit of money to do, and they're not going to do it in 1 year. So it is going to take several years.
Since they verbalized that, would you document it, though?
Yeah, but I also heard from the abutters that they don't want it to drag out forever.
Yeah, the abutters would prefer for it
We'd
to be
only
as
be
quick
doing
as
a
possible.
one-year permit, and we'd be reflecting the amount they said is appropriate for a year.
But this board could have a different makeup in a year from now. Anything could happen. And if the permit is initially only issued for a smaller amount, I think it would be in poor taste for them to come back and ask for a larger amount. I think it's better to ask for what they want, which is what they're doing, and then with the understanding that it's not really going to happen in 1 year, that they're going to renew it. And, I asked the abutter what I think the term I used was reasonable inconveniences. And he said that the time of development shortened. He had concerns about wildlife. He had concerns about the 1,500 truckloads of bulldozers, the scrapers, but all that comes with, unfortunately, that's a side effect of site development, is that you have bulldozers and other things. So.
I would second that motion with those conditions. We have all those down?
Yes.
Any further discussion?
Before we vote, I would like to know if the abutters that are present believe that there's any other conditions that would make their lives better during this process.
What haven't we asked? I don't know. I don't know how to answer that. We don't want it, but what are we supposed to ask for? What are we not asking for that we should be?
I think
How about if we had a contact? How about if we were given a contact person with Proctor, I guess, just to say, okay, everything is going smoothly, everything is going fine, there's little or no impact on our life, or just the opposite? Is that something we could do? So
That would be public record. I mean, it's a company that's doing it and their application, so, there is contact information that would be part of the permit. So
And
that is available already. If the applicants want to go further and contact you, I mean, that's up to them, they're here, but, I mean, it's part of how to contact them is part of the permit.
Yeah, I think after a year,
And as the permit shows, by the way, they live like, less than a quarter of a mile away from you.
okay, I don't know where they live, but,
What's
that
on the
would,
permit? They live.
at the end of a year, we would surely know how it feels, how it smells, we'd know.
They have to come back for a renewal.
Yeah.
in a
Every year,
so-
every year.
Okay.
So that you could certainly make your comments at the
I
renewal.
believe they expire in August, so it's not good for a year.
And
Don't they go till August?
I know this is difficult, but I would encourage that the applicant
They usually do.
does a lot of business in town, and they're reputationally, they are very considerate people. I think in this instance, that they were under the impression that we would follow rules similar to a different board and not allow the reaching out to abutters prior to, but I would expect that going forward, that you'll find them to be a lot more friendly and concerned. They also live right down the road from you.
Yeah, and I feel less concerned than I did when I walked in here. I will say that because of the work you've done and the work that they've done. I just, it's,
You don't want it to happen, and neither do I.
and it's going to happen. I just want it to happen so that nobody is suffering. He gets his dirt and we get our
Right,
sleep.
And that's our goal. I hope you feel that way, but that's our goal too. I mean, I don't want anybody to be, what was the word you used, the term you used? Unnecessarily put out. But I mean, there is some rights to the property. It is a
Yeah.
commercial zone, but we want to make sure everybody's taken care of too. I don't want there to be vibrations in your house because but again, with no blasting and 150 feet away, I mean, I don't see that as a problem. They've been building a home next to my house for over a year now with equipment there every day, and I never feel vibrations in my house, and it's probably about the same thing, 150, 200 feet away.
Yeah.
And we renew these in August, so all of our earth removal permits get reviewed in August.
Right. And one of the things that did happen, as Mrs. Adams said, last year, when the building inspector noted violations that were not being addressed, they will be inspected. All of them will be inspected.
And if you come before us in August and tell us that your house has been covered in dust this whole time, that you've gone to them and they're not responsive to you, we're going to have a problem in August.
We have to renew it in August.
If you're having a problem like that, presumably you would let the Board of Selectmen know before then.
Okay.
But I do understand that no one should have to, live in a construction zone 24/7, but reasonable site development, reasonable inconvenience for a short period of time.
I know it's getting late. You guys are great.
Well, time isn't
I
really
understand,
concerning
I
to me.
understand what's going to take place tonight, and I want to tell you that I moved to Lunenburg to get away from a gravel pit in Franklin, Mass. And if you think 150 feet or one house lot compared to what's going to take place here, you're kidding yourself. You have no idea what's going to take place. I will tell you that within 3 days or sooner, if I can do it, my home will be up for sale. I cannot put up with a 3-year gravel pit, and that's all that's going to be, is a gravel pit. And it's laying on your shoulders, not mine. You'll see anytime, you'll see the sign, or you'll see it in the newspaper. 70 Townsend Harbor Road is up for sale.
I was the realtor that sold them their house years ago.
Do you have to disclose now that it's abutting a gravel pit?
I'm sorry to have to hear that tonight.
Along with the conditions that Mr. Jeffries asked, I should read into the record what the standard conditions of the removal are, and they would be: 1, when the earth removal operation for any area of 5 acres or more is finished and/or a permit is not renewed for an area, the respective applicant must, within a 2-year period thereafter, reforest and/or provide suitable ground cover as may be deemed appropriate for that particular area by the Board of Selectmen or their designated agent. The earth removal operation completed on any area of land of less than 5 acres, the above shall also apply with the exception that said foresting and/or suitable ground cover must be provided with a 1-year period thereafter. Number 2, an appropriate buffer zone is to be established and maintained so as to not cause damage and/or destruction to adjacent property. As the respective buffer zone will fluctuate with each parcel, and provided that it is not stated in this permit, the respective applicant will furnish within a 60-day period after issuance of the permit a letter to this board setting forth this information, at which time the board will accept or reject the requested buffer zone with appropriate notification to said applicant. Number 3, no grade level shall be greater than 15 degrees from a property line and the depth not to exceed 30 feet. Number 4, excavation to be 4 feet above the high water table. This restriction would not be applicable for the authorized formation of man-made lakes and/or ponds. 5, no work shall commence until a stormwater special permit is approved. 6, the hour of operations reset. And 7, a site plan approval shall be required through the planning board for any construction of a new commercial use. So those should be standard. You should be aware of all those. That will also be part of the conditions.
Is our expectation that work is going to commence immediately, or that it will be delayed until the planning board issues?
They cannot
They can't
commence
do it
until they
until
get
they
this,
get
the
that.
planning board approves the stormwater.
Okay.
Okay, so we have the motion with the conditions. It has been seconded. Any last comments?
I'm, as expected, going to say nay, just because I don't feel prepared. I wanted a little bit more information on how to address the quantity over time.
Understood.
And with that information, I would be for it. But not having that opportunity, I'm just going to be consistent and
Understood. All those in favor of the motion with the conditions to approve this earth removal permit as presented with the order conditions, as I said, sorry to be redundant, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
nay.
Okay, 3-2. It is approved.
Thank you. And thank you for choosing to continue to invest in Lunenburg.
All right. Ratification of town manager appointment of the COA van driver David Gallagher.
I'm asking the board to ratify my appointment of David Gallagher for the Council on Aging van driver, which has also been recommended by the Council on Aging Director, Sue Doherty.
I would make a motion that we ratify that appointment.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Ratification of town manager appointment of the animal control officer Kathy Como.
Again, I'm asking the board to ratify this appointment for Kathy Como as continued as our animal control officer.
I entertain a motion.
I make a motion that we ratify the appointment of Animal Control Officer Kathy Como.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Zoning Board of Appeals appointment, Patrick Callahan, 24 Beale Street.
He's here.
He's here. Oh, all right.
Thanks for hanging in.
I don't know if I'm ready for this kind of heat, but I'll give it my best. I expect no less than an hour and a half. Patrick Callahan, 24 Beale
Well,
Street.
if you start back when you were 4, cover an hour and a half.
I'll
don't
begin
wanna-
with the
you
fact
don't
that
wanna
I'm
hear
going
that.
to recuse myself
Abstain, right?
Oh, okay.
from this.
Yeah. You guys are related.
Yeah, then.
My sister-in-law. You
Oh,
can
okay.
say whatever you want. You come on.
When he gets home, my mom's going to go relieve my dad from babysitting for me.
So anyway, I was appointed by this board as the associate member. I don't remember when, maybe about a year ago. And we had an unfortunate loss, and so I'm here to step up to that role.
Sounds great. How long have you been an associate, you said?
About a year.
About a year.
Yep,
Enjoy it?
I do.
Good.
I do. It's been a very good experience.
That was the right
and,
answer, by the way. That was-
I'd like to say that I've had the opportunity to witness CBA hearings with Mr. Callahan serving as a member. I was impressed that his focus was on zoning regulations, and I was impressed with his ability to articulate simply and clearly his questions and concerns. I think he'll make a great fit for that board, which consists of volunteers who are dedicated to the protection of Lunenburg and its zoning. So thank you for
I
coming
appreciate
forward.
that. Thank you.
I think it's always good to see people that are still raising families and on the younger side of the house getting involved in politics, and hopefully we'll all stay involved for quite some time.
Absolutely. Thank you.
A town our size depends on volunteers, that's for sure.
It does.
Just for information, so this term, if Mr. Callahan were to be appointed, this would expire in June 30th of 2022. So just so everybody knows the term.
Perfect. Fine with me.
For the long haul. And just out of curiosity, what other vacancies, you leave now a vacancy of an associate member. What
Yeah.
else do we need to make the zoning
I
board
want to say
full?
it's 2 or 3
Well,
there.
we'll have to look. I'm sure
Yeah.
it's in the town manager report.
Well, I'd move we appoint Patrick Callahan to the Zoning Board of Appeals until June 30th.
6/30/22, yep.
Oh, yeah, 2022.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None.
Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Keep up the good work.
Yes, thank you.
What do I have to do?
Nothing. This is for him.
Okay, now, finally, the 5-year financial forecast. No, town manager report. See, I'm getting so excited I missed number 5.
But it's very short, so.
Town manager report is that next, she's going to give the
Yes.
5-year financial forecast.
The announcement on existing vacancies. We have 1 regular member and 3 alternate vacancies on the Agricultural Commission, 1 vacancy on the Americans with Disabilities Act Commission, 1 vacancy on the Architectural Preservation District Commission, 1 vacancy on Finance Committee, 1 vacancy on the Open Space Committee, a vacancy on the Planning Board, 2 vacancies, recent vacancies on the Sewer Commission, which we have had a interested party that submitted a talent bank form today, and they've requested to put this on the February 4th meeting.
Excellent.
For one of the vacancies. And so now we have 3 associate vacancies on the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Doesn't it say one regular member and two
We just
associates?
filled the regular member.
Yeah, but it says two associates.
Yeah, now there's three.
Now it's
It's
3.
shifted.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So, talent bank forms can be obtained on the town website or from the Board of Selectmen's office. The board, this is a follow-up from the last meeting on the old primary school. I did a review of the facilities account, and due to drop-off of certain projects that were not needed in contingency funds, such as the Eagle House project that will be done by the end of next week, and we do have enough funding available to do the hazardous materials survey.
Excellent.
Awesome. And I have solicited quotes for that as well.
Excellent.
Oh, thank you.
An update on the meeting with Mass DOT for the intersection at Route 2A and Route 13. I received a call today from Mass DOT regarding the meeting that the police chief has been trying to set up for months with Mass DOT, and so we will be meeting with them, the police chief, the DPW director, and I next week on site.
Thank you on that. I think there was another accident this past week, and it always hits Facebook, and everybody always
Yep.
has a lot of stress. And so I appreciate that we truly are continuing to work with the state as we continue to have accidents. At least there's not a fatal one, but I think it'll feel good to see an improvement there in hopes to prevent continued accidents. So
No,
thank you.
and- Yep, and thank you to the police chief for all the calls and emails that he's sent as well, trying to set this up. Upcoming meetings, the TCP Building Design Committee will be interviewing firms next Wednesday, the 29th, at 6 PM in this meeting room. And I will be presenting the capital plan and 5-year forecast to the Finance Committee as well this Thursday, January 23rd at 6 PM.
And you didn't mention next Tuesday's meeting.
And next Tuesday's meeting, we will have a public forum for anyone who wishes to attend to ask questions about the 5-year forecast and capital plan.
I have a question, Town Manager. Just, do you have an update on where we're at with the tanks for DPW, the fuel tanks?
The last quote, the revised last quote was received. I just need to sit down and go through all 3.
Do you think it's likely that we'll have them, the work started before the next town meeting?
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, now the 5-year forecast.
All right.
Although with the length of this meeting, it may only be a 4-year forecast.
So Emily in the booth, if you, the 5-year forecast document, I gave it to Cable so they could project it on the screen as well. So just to start off, what is a financial forecast? It's a financial planning and policy-making tool that projects revenues and expenditures conservatively over a multi-year period. It is a living document that is used to evaluate a budget over a 5-year period and update the forecast and with changing financial data. And why do we forecast? There are many reasons why we forecast that are considered a best practice in financial management. For example, it provides a starting point for which to provide a balanced budget. It projects likely outcomes based on historical practices, allows to look at what-if scenarios. It indicates future budget gaps, projects revenues and expenditures conservatively over a 5-year period. It is also required per our town charter, section 4-2, subsection S, and bond rating agencies look favorably upon communities that annually prepare a forecast document. So a forecast provides a long-term and big picture financial perspective on service delivery using both known information and assumptions on future revenues and expenditures. The budget is a specific plan detailing service delivery in the coming fiscal year. The goals of forecasting are to gain a long-term perspective and basis for planning, determine whether fiscal problems are on the horizon. It's a time to plan for change, whether it be favorable or unfavorable, and it reinforces the need for long-range considerations during the annual budget process. The key concepts are using reasonable conservative assumptions that must be evaluated and updated each year, and it represents the community's projected financial position, is a tool to evaluate the impact of various budgeting decisions and policy choices over time. It is a living document that can be adjusted. And once you develop a baseline projection, the underlying assumptions can be adjusted to address issues. A forecasted shortfall needs to be examined and does imply that some action needs to be taken or at least planned to avoid the financial problem. So the action would be to balance the budget, either raising revenues or reducing expenditures. The tools used to put a forecast together are Massachusetts general laws, town bylaws, and other generally accepted standards, our financial policies, a historical trend analysis, debt service schedules, union and employment contracts, and other assumptions. The financial policies of the town include exempt and non-exempt borrowing and debt burden. So our regular debt is no more than 4% of the regular tax levy, and the total of annual debt for exempt debt is no more than 11% of the tax levy, and the net debt service of exempt and non-exempt is no more than 14% of the tax levy. Our use of free cash policy stipulates to use on the regular stabilization account, and it also funds non-reoccurring expenditures, the capital plan, OPEB, other post-employment benefits, and the special purpose stabilization fund. The stabilization fund account deposits free cash in the amount of 5% of the current fiscal year omnibus into the regular stabilization. And for capital projects, they're defined as projects or assets that are 10,000 or more with a life expectancy of 3 or more years. The OPEB funding policy is to deposit 10% of our certified free cash from the previous fiscal year. Trend analysis and contractual obligations. We look at historical data to see what type of trends and revenues have occurred over periods of time. Use of historical data can assist in predicting future trends. Union contracts, salary administration plan increases for non-union employees accepted by town meeting vote, and employment contracts, and other known contractual increases such as audits or regional assessing services, and the existing debt service schedules. Assumptions for the financial forecast for fiscal 21 through fiscal 25. Use data obtained from all sources mentioned to make assumptions about revenues, which include property taxes, state aid, estimated local receipts, and other available funds. On the expenditures, includes all operational costs to provide equivalent staffing levels as fiscal 20 and related expenses for existing programs. The fiscal 21 through fiscal 25 financial forecast includes the long-term staffing plan for the police and fire and provides a scenario for staffing increases for the Lunenburg Public Schools. It has our debt service schedules, assessments for regional services, pension costs, health, life, and life insurance, general insurance, and OPEB costs, as well as the reserve fund, stabilization, and state assessments. On to the revenues. When forecasting revenues, there are both known figures and assumptions used. Starting with property taxes, we know the starting levy limit, which is the prior year tax levy, and we add 2.5% per Proposition 2.5 and add new growth. For the fiscal 21 forecast, we're using 350,000 for new growth, and for years fiscal 22 through 25, 300,000. The debt exclusions are added to the tax levy limit and are known figures per the debt schedule at that point in time. State aid, fiscal 21 level funds state aid, and fiscal years 22 through 25 assumes a 2.5% increase from the previous fiscal year. For local receipts, the forecast assumes a 2.5% increase for motor vehicle excise and a 2% increase for all other local receipt categories. And that's for fiscal years 21 through 25. Other available funds, the fiscal 21 forecast uses target budget use of free cash, and fiscal 22 through 25 does not predict the use of free cash, predict free cash amounts, and uses the known MSBA amount reserved for debt service totaling approximately $535,000, which drops, those payments drop off in fiscal 24. And just to go into new growth a little bit, new growth has fluctuated based on the economy. We've seen certified new growth along different levels, but as you know, this previous year or this current year, our new growth figure was less than the estimate we used at town meeting, and therefore that was used in the assumption for this financial forecast, that it's declining. Property tax must comply with Proposition 2.5, therefore is calculated at 2.5 increase over the previous year's tax levy limit. As I stated, the new growth, fiscal 21 is $350,000, and future years $300,000 is used as the estimate. And exempt debt includes debt exclusions based on the debt schedule at this point in time, net of bond premiums and MSBA reimbursements. The state aid revenue projection in the financial forecast level funds state aid in fiscal 21 and uses a 2.5% increase for fiscal years 22 through 25. The governor will release his budget for state aid for fiscal 21 this coming weekend at the MMA conference, and that is the figure that we use as our baseline for our budget. So once that figure is known, that will be used for the fiscal 21 state aid number. And state aid includes Chapter 70 funding for schools, other school funding, unrestricted general government aid, 40S smart growth money, which Lunenburg is one of 2 communities in Massachusetts to receive, unrestricted general government aid, and other funding and reimbursements. Locally generated revenues other than real and personal property taxes include motor vehicle and other excise taxes, pilot payments, penalties and interest, charges and fees, investment income, and miscellaneous receipts. The forecast includes a 2.5% increase for motor vehicle excise and a 2% increase for all other local receipts. We have unofficially adopted a policy of earmarking an additional $50,000 a year for the pavement management line account, and that's from the local receipt number. We received 13% more in actual motor vehicle excise receipts than our estimated motor vehicle excise receipts in fiscal 19, and the same trend exists when you compare our total local receipt estimates against our receipts in fiscal 19. Although we did receive more in motor vehicle receipts than originally estimated, we received less in other categories of revenues. Overall, we received 0.22% more, or $88,000 in total revenues than estimated. By continuing to keep our estimates low for local receipts, the difference between the estimated and actual receipts gives us a positive free cash. And this helps to pay for capital items, put money towards the regular stabilization plan and the special purpose stabilization accounts, and helps fund our OPEB liabilities for the coming fiscal year. Other available revenues include free cash and other available funds, and other available funds includes funds from the artificial turf revolving fund to pay for the turf field, and MSBA funds reserved for debt service. These are budgeted as needed to cover for the appropriate expenses. And as a general rule, a financial forecast does not project free cash, and therefore this forecast only uses the known amount in fiscal 21 for the projected budget. And this follows a cardinal rule of not using free cash on your operating budget. The last category of revenues includes enterprise funds. The revenues from enterprise funds are segregated from the general fund, and these funds are self-supporting. The receipts equal the projected expenses plus indirect costs, which are budgeted in the general fund. We have 4 enterprise funds: water, sewer, public access, and solid waste. The forecast includes indirect costs and revenue projections, and these funds come from the enterprise accounts to cover costs such as health insurance and retirement costs for enterprise employees, and the associated enterprise debt payments.
Just a question for
Yes.
people following along. Public access is public access television.
Yes.
Okay.
On to expenditures. The forecast uses a moderately conservative approach. It looks at actual expenditures from previous years for historical trends. It uses the current budget year as a base. For personnel costs, it includes our obligations for bargaining contracts and employment contracts, and wage and classification plans for non-union personnel. Covers all contractual increases, and if we were to analyze different impacts, it should be done on a separate worksheet. And for expenses, we look at annually historical expenditures, and the forecast covers it conservatively and maintains the current programs. The categories under expenditures include personnel and expenses related to providing the same programs and staffing levels, which includes contractual obligations with the exception of the police and fire staffing plan, education costs, debt service, capital, health and life insurance, retirement, general insurance, and other amounts to be raised such as tax title, overlay, cherry sheet offsets, prior year deficits, snow and ice deficits, and court judgments, as well as state assessments, the reserve fund, special articles, and transfers to stabilization, and the special purpose stabilization and OPEB trust fund. The assumptions used adhere to our financial policies and honor contractual obligations, provide for the same staffing levels except where noted, includes 2% increase in most services and commodities, keeps our utility costs between 1.5 to 3% for fiscal years 22 through 25, assumes 10% increase for retirement assessment each year of the forecast. It assumes a 6.5% increase for health insurance in fiscal 21 and an 8% increase for years fiscal 22 through 25. It assumes a 2% increase in other insurances for fiscal years 22 through 25. And fiscal 21 reflects the target budget that departments were asked to meet when developing their budgets. The assumptions continued. State assessments and cherry sheet offsets are level funded for fiscal 21, and it assumes a 2.5% increase for fiscal years 22 through 25. Assumes that tax title costs will be $24,000 for fiscal 21 and increases by 2% in future years. It level funds the overlay account in fiscal 21 and increases it by $10,000 in future years. It increases the pavement management plan by $50,000 per year. It assumes 2.5% increase for the Lunenburg Public Schools and Monty Tech, and it assumes level funding the reserve fund. This slide is a snapshot of the expenditures categories. It shows actually included fiscal 19 and 20 in that, so you'll see previous years. But, and I'm sure for the people at home, you cannot read that screen. It's very tiny print. But, like I said, this covers all contractual increases and the assumptions already noted. Just another note, the debt schedule does include the ladder truck and the Celebra property purchase.
Does or does not?
Does include it.
And
The
we are-
projected payment schedule.
And we are at the cusp, like this is, from what I'm seeing here, this is the high year. And then it goes down seemingly, well, next year it'll go down a little, but then it goes
Yes.
down pretty precipitously.
Yes, 23 and 24 before see large drops
Excellent.
in debt.
Which is
So we're
excellent.
assuming we're not
Which is
taking on
excellent.
any more debt?
This forecast assumes no new debt.
2023 expires public safety in the library.
Okay.
So the debt service goes down like 40%. That's great.
It's cut. We'll see. 2025, it'll be cut less than half the
Well, I'm
number.
sure
As
we'll
we all
find
know,
new
there are
debt.
a number of projects out there
Right,
that,
as it is-
yeah.
Well,
This
no,
is the
but you're
forecast.
forecasting, you're not.
I'm not assuming any new debt, but that doesn't
haven't
mean
The town meeting has to.
decisions down the line. We would have to look at the debt in light of that.
No, I don't understand. Either you're assuming we're gonna have new debt, or you're assuming we're not gonna have new debt.
Town meeting would have to vote for new debt.
Her projection assumes no new debt. That
Right.
was her assumption. Yes.
Great.
Okay.
But I think what we understand is that there probably will be some new debt,
Well, that's not our.
unrelated to anything.
Well,
that we have.
you know, if we think there's gonna be new debt, we should be forecasting it, or the 5-year forecast is a piece of
Well,
rubbish.
unless
But that
you-
would be a different, whole different conversation than tonight.
I get
It's
what
not a
you're
whole
saying.
different conversation tonight.
I
You're-
think it
You're either
is.
projecting 5 years out, or you're not. Is this a fanciful sheet, or is it based on what you think is gonna happen?
I don't know what's going to happen with a variety of things. I'm forecasting right now at this point in time with the debt,
Right.
based on our debt schedule right now.
Okay, so we're not anticipating new debt.
That's not what I'm saying.
Okay,
not-
let's put that as a note to discuss. Let her finish the presentation. and
Okay,
then we can-
but you interrupted it.
Yeah, I'm
some,
sorry, I
so-
did. Yes. I interrupted it with good news, not to start an argument about whether there's going to be new debt or not.
Well, if you interrupt, we can interrupt.
I guess.
All right. To recap, the target budget, forecast budget for fiscal '21 increases property taxes by 2.5% and uses an estimate of $350,000 for new growth and $300,000 for the future years. It level funds state aid for fiscal '21 and forecasts a 2.5% increase for state in future years. It uses a 2.5% increase for motor vehicle excise and 2% for all other receipt categories. It uses, for fiscal '21, it uses $889,133 of our certified free cash, $679,133 of that amount towards the fiscal '21 capital plan, $100,000 into the stabilization account, and $110,000 into the OPEB trust fund. And the forecast does not predict the use of any free cash or other available funds are used consistently across fiscal '21 through '25 from the artificial turf fund as well as the MSBA reserve for debt service. And the forecast budget for fiscal '21 and forecast for '22 through '25 does not draw on stabilization and does not include any new borrowing. On the expenditure side, the fiscal '21 level funds cherry sheet charges and the forecast for '22 through '25 increases cherry sheet charges by 2.5% from the previous fiscal year. It provides for all contractual increases, provides for 6.5% increase in health insurance costs, 10% increase in retirement assessment, level funds other insurance costs, and provides a 2.5% increase in schools, increases the pavement management plan by $50,000, and provides $100,000 for stormwater. It level funds the reserve accounts. It level funds departmental expense accounts and no new debt. And it provides for $650,000 in tax revenues for capital, as I stated those amounts previously. And it also provides for contractual increases for existing staff and projects any unknown salaries at 2% and expenses at 2% for future years. And it provides 8% in health insurance increase for future years, 10% for retirement assessment, 2% in other insurance costs, and 2.5% in school. And just the same as for fiscal '21, 50,000 for the pavement management plan, 100,000 for stormwater each year, and no new debt, but does include the ladder truck and sleeper properties purchases, and identifies 100,000 for stabilization, 200,000 for special purpose stabilization, and 100,000 in OPEB, and 650,000 in capital each year. So this slide shows the impact, the bottom line impact. As you'll see, there's a deficit in fiscal years 22 through 25. This can largely be explained by the non-use of, or the non-projected free cash figure. So we have been fortunate to have some large certified free cash numbers over the previous years. So if you plugged those numbers in, those deficits would be gone.
May we ask a question as we go, or are we waiting till the end?
If it's a quick question, if it's a discussion question, then hold on. So if it's a yes or no, or you want
Well,
to...
it's just pertinent to this slide, so, I mean, I can go back to it.
Okay, yeah, just write it down. We'll go back to it. I'm sure that's going to be the slide that we'll probably wind up talking about.
I think 29 is probably the slide we're going to talk about.
So as part of this year's process, after last year's budgeting process, I worked with the superintendent and the business manager on that we would include a forecast and try to work for a long-term plan and what that impact would look like. So these slides pertain to that. So the proposed 5-year staffing plan for the school includes additional monies for fiscal 21 through 25 in this plan. The impact to fiscal 21 is $336,330, an additional $1,178,097 in fiscal 22, an additional $2,073,070 in fiscal 23, an additional $2,917,357 in fiscal 24, and an additional $3,594,326 in fiscal 25. And this carries forward all associated costs for any new positions in the 5-year staffing plan, including health insurance costs. And this scenario is based on these amounts being on top of the projected 2.5. So the bottom line you see there is the 2.5% projected each year with those figures that I just stated.
So that's a
But
40...
those additional.
Additional, yeah,
It's a
on top of
40%
it.
increase in the school budget in 5 years.
I haven't done them, but we can get to questions at the end of the presentation. This slide shows the net effect of the proposed long-term staffing plan on each of the 5-year forecast plans. Some conclusions. The forecast indicates deficits in fiscal years 22 through 25, but as I stated before, this is does not assume the use of free cash in fiscals 22 through 25. So we could assume that deficit would be eliminated. This does indicate we need to continue to review a long-term staffing plan with the school to achieve their intended results for getting to their goal for bringing the education level up to their strategic plan. Next steps, continue the discussion of assumptions if needed, firm up revenue estimates for fiscal 21 when we receive the governor's fiscal 21 budget proposal, receive the Worcester County retirement assessment, which we received today, which is not indicated in this proposal. And we have budget meetings throughout February and March, and I'm currently reviewing the fiscal 21 budget submissions, and the proposed preliminary budget will be on February 13th, and that will show the target and above target requests and what the my proposal for fiscal '21 budget is. And the annual meeting, town meeting, is May 2nd this year. It's early. That's it.
Yes, it's my wife's birthday. She's thrilled, by the way.
Well, you mentioned you have some questions, so I'll wait.
And I do want to thank you for everyone who stayed this long. And I did ask the superintendent and business manager to be here tonight to answer questions related to the school.
I appreciate that. If we have questions, which I'm sure people do, let's do one topic that may cause a discussion per person, and we'll just go down, so no one person kind of occupies the whole string here. So, Mr. Jeffries, if you want to start?
Sure. My question is on the school budget.
And
So
reference a page if you
Sure. So I'm looking at page 29 and page 30. And I want to cross-reference that forward to page 23. So according to page 23, and I'm looking at 25, and I want to work backwards. According to page 23, we're projecting that our expenses in 2025 will be $46,847,000. Based on the plan that is presented by the school, our expenses in 2025 for the school will be $28 million and roughly $20,000, which over today's numbers is around a 40% increase in the school budget, and will have us $4 million in the red. So how do we plan on closing this gap? I guess
You're
this-
asking from
yeah, on revenue. I mean, does this need to be closed on the school request side, or are you anticipating that we're going to be overriding and getting increase in the school budget by this much over 5 years?
I think that's a larger discussion. Tomorrow night is when the superintendent presents the budget, and I assume those questions will come up as well there. But as far as, obviously, we can't handle it within our existing revenues. It would, if it came to that point, it would require an override. That we don't have enough revenue stream to cover.
I don't understand why these numbers are even here. I mean, that's absurd.
Is there an alternative plan that meets, I guess, your projected 5-year numbers? In other words, have you and the superintendent been able to sync up and figure out how, based on what you project the revenue being and the various needs of different departments in town, that how we can help the schools reach their strategic goals, but at a significantly less projected cost?
Yeah, their goals have to be lessened.
I think we're at the beginning stages of doing that. This was the first step to make sure something was included in the forecast, especially after our symposium of looking at the positions and how, what that impact would really look like. So this is kind of the first look at the impact of what is being proposed.
But it's a ridiculous look.
I think
It's an absurd look.
It was a request for what the departments thought they needed.
And if wishes were horses, I mean, really? It's unbelievable. I'm insulted.
That's your right. It's just a projection of what they feel they need to meet the objectives that they are presented with.
And which bank are they going to rob? I mean, Jesus.
Well, again, they're asked to do a job, and that's to educate our children in the manner that people expect them to. This is what they feel would be appropriate, or what they feel like they need to do that. And if it doesn't work out that way and they have to do it with less, that's what they have to do. They do it with less, but this is what they feel like would get the job done. So it's obviously up for discussion. It's a 5-year forecast. They're saying this is what would get the job done the way we want to do it. Now the discussion starts about either how you back that off or how you pay for it.
Well,
how you
again,
back
my
it up.
question is really on, I mean, they're asking for $3.5 million in fiscal year '25 on top of a 2.5% increase from the year before. So I guess I'm trying to figure out, how do we progress in a way that supports the schools to accomplish their strategic goals, but doesn't put us as townspeople in a position for the next 5 years where we're having to hear an argument of cutting teachers or, raising scores or getting kids better prepared for the workforce or whatever it is, whatever our overall large goals are here.
It's
I mean,
not
how do
just
we
the next
bridge-
5 years,
Well, I
it's the
think we
next 5
bridge
years
that.
into infinity.
I think it's the beginning of the discussion. I mean, to your hypothetical, maybe there is no way of avoiding that discussion. I don't know. I mean, I think that's what the discussion is. I mean, obviously, we can't reach that without town meeting and town ballot approving it. So, I mean, it's a starting question. Like, this is what the people in those positions, the professionals, think that we need to do this. Now, they can convince people. Maybe they can convince people and they still won't vote for it because they don't have the money. I mean, there's a lot of discussion that has to go on between this point and a realization of any kind. But I think you have to have a starting point.
All right.
Now, I have a question about this, and it's just a straight number question. If I do, from page 29, if I do that math of those 5 years, add them up, to me, that adds up to like $10 million. But if I look at the number on the top of that, from 20.7 million, 2025 isn't $10 million more. So what am I missing? It's like $3 million short.
So your revenues are 4,312,000 less than your expenditure levels.
No, I'm talking about 29. So this page, go back a page.
Oh, okay.
Right here. These numbers that you're saying you're adding, those add up to $10 million. But the number from 20 million in FY 2020 to there is only going up 7 million. So I'm trying to find out, where am I missing $3 million?
Are they cumulative, or are they all referencing year one as the?
Well, no, that's what I thought, but it says, it makes it a point to say an additional in FY '22 and an additional. So I got to believe they're cumulative, right? So the first 2 years is, let's just round it off, 1.5 million, add that to the last one of 3.5, that's 5 million. And then
Yeah.
3 million, another 5 million, so it's like $10 million.
So the numbers might actually be higher.
So the
than what
numbers
we're
are going
looking
to be,
So instead of being short $4 million in 2025, we'll be short
So
$7
the
million.
number in the chart is less than the number
Oh,
adding
well,
up the
4,
quantities.
7, what the heck?
I think the important thing is that all of this is forecasting, so it's predicting and thinking, and it doesn't mean happening, and I don't
Yeah,
think you
I
can
would think
prepare for everybody's needs without putting it in the forecast. And so I don't, although it's frightening to see the numbers, I wouldn't agree that it's disrespectful to put in there, because I think they're putting there expressing what they feel are their burdens, and then it becomes the town's burdens. And so by forecasting it, my question is along these lines, but it was very, very generic. And as we went along, it changed more from a question to a thought, which is that if we know we're forecasting shortfalls, that needs to play into other decisions we make in terms of taking on new debt, or as we look forward to different types of projects, especially because expenditures are sort of fixed, like people's salaries, people's raises, health insurance, those are fixed. Revenues are more anticipated, a little more wishy-washy, like if there's an economic change that we're not predicting. Our revenues could go down, our expenditures in a lot of ways are more fixed. So the discrepancy could actually be worse if our revenues went down, if we have like an economic, downfall, which is
Should be
usually
expected.
imminent. So as you look out 5 years from now, what we're hoping for as revenues is truly a hope. What we're predicting as expenses, we're pretty sure they are. I mean, those are based on things we know we need to fund, like salaries. So I just feel like forecasting is healthy, because if you're forecasting shortfalls or anticipated shortfalls, and then you need to make decisions accordingly. I mean, there's this year's budget where there's not a shortfall. So we can go into this season with a plan and then dissect it each year as a specific year, whereas this is just a forecast. So I think it's healthy to see what could be the anticipated problems, and yet it doesn't mean they're going to happen. It doesn't mean that somebody is going to get the amount of money that they predict they need if it's not available.
I think a totally unrealistic forecast is unhealthy. There ain't no way we're getting to these amounts.
Well, especially if
I
the
would
amount
find-
in the
I-
chart is not even reflecting the amounts down. We'll figure out which one is the true amount.
I haven't spoken to everybody who's predicted these, but I think I'd probably be pretty safe to say I don't think people are expecting that they're going to get everything they're asking for.
I would have to assume that.
So,
But
mean,
I think
that doesn't mean
they're just-
that doesn't mean it's not constructive to tell people what you believe you need when you're asked to do a job. And if the town can't afford it, or doesn't, or chooses not to afford it, or doesn't agree with your assumptions, then that's fine. But they told you what they said they needed. That's the starting point.
Yeah.
I just
think-
think being so unrealistic and wildly out of reach is disrespectful to the taxpayers. I just think it's
Didn't
way
get to
out
the
of.
taxpayers yet. I mean, we're just in a
It's
forum.
getting to the
in a forum.
taxpayers right now.
They're not nobody's asking anybody to pay for anything. We're saying that if every department had their way, this is what it would look like.
And if we did a boot drive every weekend.
I think I'm trying to understand, though, as I, Heather, look at page 23, and we review what the projected expenditures are over the next 5 years, to me, this looks very reasonable. But my question is, and according to these projections, because, education is an extremely important thing that we do here in town. It's also our single largest budget item. So what I'm wondering is that $24 million number that you are saying is something that we can manage in 2025. Is that something that the schools can work with in 2025? Based on what they know their upcoming expenditures are, is that reasonable for them?
Well, it's
I
$3 million,
we're not
go
at the
ahead.
point where we can answer that question. The superintendent hasn't even presented the budget, but I'll let her speak for herself.
And while she's coming to it, I would encourage everybody who has questions like that to come to the school committee meeting and hear the presentation tomorrow.
Correct. Tomorrow evening, we'll present our first iteration of a budget for FY21.
How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Good.
So this was a first-time ask, actually, of the school department to think about a 5-year staffing plan. It had never been done before. We had just finished the development, and the school committee approved a strategic plan for continuous improvement. And we outlined some large objective areas. So in thinking about what staffing we would need to actually execute that plan in the next 5 years, that is what resulted in the list of positions that was presented at the symposium, but then broken down year 1, year 2, 3, 4, 5. I will tell you that it is a significant challenge for us every single year to accurately predict our needs for the coming year, because students come and manifest different needs that we did not necessarily anticipate. We have to address those needs. We cannot say to the children or to their parents, we'll try to put something in the budget next year, just hang on a year and we'll be able to support you. We have to support them in the current year. We're always doing the best we can with what we have to support the students and give them access to a good quality education. That said, no disrespect was intended. We understand that it's not realistic that in a 5-year window, we are going to see all of those positions. As an example, we presented to the school committee in December what the mapping out of that 5 years would look like and the positions that we prioritized for year 1. The list was lengthy. Many of those positions are not going to be included in next year's budget. We know that we need to work to prioritize. We know that resources are limited. I still, however, feel that I have a responsibility to advocate for what the schools need to provide access to a quality education for all of the students. We are seeing some particular challenges right now with the student profiles, particularly of the younger ones. We're seeing more behavioral health needs emerging. For the little ones, that is truly manifesting in behaviors that need to be addressed and supported so that those children get what they need to be able to access their learning. But we also need to address those students' needs so that the learning process for their cohort, their peers in classroom, are not disrupted. We have an obligation to meet their needs. Currently, my assessment over the last year and a half in the district, we don't have the expertise amongst the teaching staff to handily address children with this sort of need. There's professional development need there. We also don't necessarily have all of the professional staff necessary on board. So as an example, the team, if you will, that tends to support children that have these most significant behavioral needs would be folks like, yes, your principal, your assistant principal, your school psychologist, a board-certified behavior analyst, your guidance counseling staff, and at the K-5 level, much of that staff is split between schools. So you don't have that team in place 5 days a week in each building. Children don't manage themselves and then find themselves dysregulated when they know that the staff are available in the building to support them. They have difficulties every day. But I don't have a consistent, stable, continuous support team in place in those buildings 5 days a week. It's a challenge for us. It is a significant challenge for us. I can tell you that from 30 years of experience in education, I can tell you that we have some skill gaps in expertise amongst our faculty and even in our leadership. Working in a way with skill and expertise with data to inform what we're doing, that's a gap area. We don't have any staff that I can see that can fill a leadership role in the district in literacy, reading and writing, K through 5. It's non-existent. So there are some skill gaps that I'm going to have to hire expertise in to support the district in moving the district in the right way to benefit the children. I know that we're not going to see all of these positions in a 5-year window. But we felt that we had to identify those areas, those positions of need, so that it's out there. It may take us 7, 8, 9, 10 years to get those positions, but I can tell you that as time passes along, the needs are going to shift. If we see a shift in our enrollment, if enrollment increases, and a lot of the positions that you see there are based on projections. We recently had a firm give us some projections. They're saying 20 additional students annually for the next 10 years. The challenge is, I don't know what grade levels those children are going to be. I might see 25 kindergartners register one year that we didn't expect. That's another classroom with a kindergarten teacher. If I see in the course of a year 20 new students enroll, but they're speckled K through 12, that's something easier to absorb with the staffing that you have. So it's very difficult for us to give you something that's truly reliable. This is the work of a leadership team taking a look at what we know our needs are, identifying those positions that we think will help us make an impact for kids. And we put them all to paper. And we wrestled with, how do we map that out year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? We have a lot of need. We're going to put the need up front. I can tell you that if you see the presentation for the budget tomorrow, there are positions that already, even since the presentation to the school committee in December, are being pushed out now to year 2 and 3. Next year, we will likely be pushing more positions out to year 3 and 4 and 5 and beyond. So yes, these numbers aren't realistic. We understand that. We do understand that. But this is our attempt to identify for you all the areas of need. Should we see enrollment projections realized? Should we see a shift in the demographics of our students? We may have more students who are English language learners, which means that we have to hire additional staff with the appropriate certifications to support those students. We may see more students with behavioral needs, which might require us to hire more staff with that kind of expertise. Certainly, we want to address the literacy issue. We already know that we're going to have to look, fingers crossed, to Title I grant funding to support those positions next year. We're hopeful that when we hear what our allocations are for next year, that we will be able to fund a reading teacher at both the primary school, the Turkey Hill, and to have a Title I coordinator / literacy specialist who can lead the work of transforming literacy instruction in our district. It is sorely needed, but I need someone with that level of expertise to come in and lead the work, coach the teachers, help create the curriculum, select the appropriate curriculum materials so that we're not wasting money. So I apologize if it was taken as a bit of an insult. We're working diligently to try to identify how we can best meet the varied needs with a changing enrollment, with a change in the profile of the students that we have in front of us. Their needs are changing. We have to meet them. But I can't meet them with our current staffing.
If your budget, and I hear everything you're saying,
Yeah.
and you and I had the opportunity, just for everyone at home to know, to sit and talk about this very issue and what the unique challenges that are being faced with the school district here. As we try to realistically plan for the future, and as the town manager put forward these numbers, are you able to maintain your current staffing and potentially hire additional staff with the numbers as presented, or will these numbers result in a cut in teachers or support to the schools?
So I can tell you right now that if we're looking
2.5% a year.
at the next 5 years, 2.5% only, given our current staffing, we're projecting that potentially even next year, that 2.5% won't even cover the salary increases, lane changes with education, and so on.
When is the next?
That would be status
When
quo.
is the next teacher's contract coming?
It's currently under negotiation.
Can you reduce some of those outrageous things that were given to the teachers in the last contract?
So I can't comment on that right now.
Of course not.
I mean,
That's-
that
that's not a
contract was
public comment.
unbelievable, and it really needs to be adjusted.
And I think, too, that, for the first time tomorrow evening, the teachers are going to see the budget presentation. And I hope that over the last year and a half that we've built some level of trust between the union leadership for all of our units and the administration, and that, when we say that this is our current condition, they can trust that they're being told the truth about the current condition, and that it's not a strategy for negotiations.
But what I'm
I
hearing you
think that
say
we're
is
there.
2.5% is not enough.
We will get to a place fairly soon, if that is, what we can expect for the next 5 years, 2.5% each year. We will get to a place where we have hard decisions to make. We have some great programmatic offerings at the high school. The high schoolers are doing very well. Performance is strong. We'd love to have more opportunities for them to experience at our high school so that they don't choose to attend schools elsewhere. We would like for them to choose to stay here. But we may get to a place where nice to have is on the table for discussion with critical need to meet the needs of our students. Those are going to be difficult conversations because typically where we see the critical need is at the K-5 level, where we see the only places that we might be able to take some things off the table. Typically, you're looking at the high school. But the high schoolers are advocates for their own education, and they do come forward to the microphone, and they do advocate to maintain what they have currently.
But the little ones can't.
But the little ones can't. That's my job.
I have a question with support staff, because you said a lot of the upcoming needs will come from all the support staff needs. And just out of curiosity, do you find it easier to supply support staff at the 6 through 12, where everyone's in one building, versus the K through 2 and the 3 through 5? Or is it, does it feel different?
It's a little bit easier because those people are in the building 5 days a week, right? So their schedule might be such that they're attending to one school or the other, but they are physically present in the same building every day. Whereas the staff between the primary school and the Turkey Hill, they are not physically in the same building at all. And it creates a significant challenge for us.
Because all pre-existing conditions aside, it would be wonderful to have a K through 5. So all of that support, especially because support is more important at the younger age. There's such a disconnect with that school over there, which, I wasn't a part of, you weren't a part of, and the 3 through 5. And there's so much collaboration that I feel like is missed. And when you look at the millions in salaries that will go into supplying separate support, sometimes my
we
wheels
have
turn
many-
on a K through 5 project.
Right.
That's a conversation.
I
for another
shared
day.
a list during the presentation in December of all of the shared staff. So shared between the middle and high school, shared between Turkey Hill and the primary, and those who are shared district-wide. Even with some shared staff of a critical nature at the middle high school, we still see the need for additional FTEs in some critical areas.
And it's incredible to some of the people who are shared. I mean, I think my children probably believe there's two Mr. Adamses. I mean, he's like getting people off the bus at one place and then the next, and you're like, wait, I just saw you. And you really did just see him. And there's some people who are running extremely important roles in two places. And
yes,
because the places are separated, I think there'll be a lot of costs associated with the physical burden that we've placed on having these separate facilities.
So knowing that we are not going to be able to create the ideal complement of staff in the two buildings, we really looked to, as we were refining and, getting to the highest priority positions for next year's budget, what are the specific and unique needs of this building and this building, and what are the positions that you need to have an impact? And they are slightly different in the two primary elementary buildings. Ideally, we're still looking to strive towards getting that full complement of staffing. We recognize that might take us another year or two to get even just the really critical key positions in place. But what we've gotten to really come down to a critical need. And, asking each building administrator, what combination of positions do you think would have the greatest impact for you and the students in this building next year? If we can only get this, what's the critical combination? And both buildings came up with a slightly different critical combination based on the actual needs that they see day in and day out.
I don't want to steal your thunder from what I'm sure you're going to be presenting
it's going to be
tomorrow night.
It's going to be exhilarating tomorrow night.
I was going to suggest that let her present it tomorrow night. And then, on that note, I think from now, after this presentation, we should have an agenda item every week now until town meeting that says budget and forecast discussion, just as things come up, so that there's always something on the agenda to discuss, to give people on the board and keep us abreast of what's going on, because these are all very fluid all the time, so.
It is. It's very fluid, and it's very difficult. I wish I could come up here and say, yes, I can tell you exactly right now what I'm going to need year 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Well, if you
No
find out how
doubts
to do
about
that,
it.
please share that.
But thank you for being here, because it's so much easier to be
Sure.
conversational about
Yeah.
the budget, and I
But
think
but
it
please
helps.
do know that we fully recognize this is going to be a longer iteration than
Yeah.
a 5-year plan. And we need to reevaluate the most significant priorities every single year. And, our commitment is we will always do the very best we can for the students with what we have to work with.
I appreciate that.
Appreciate that.
Thank you all.
Forecasts aren't always positive.
They are, and
Sometimes it's a
again,
storm.
this was a unique first time that we've been asked to try to think out a 5-year window. And again, uniquely aligned with the fact that we did just put together a strategy for continuous improvement that would take us the next 3 to 5 years. So we really did think through that lens. For us to accomplish all of these things, what do we need to have in place?
I appreciate the thoughtfulness of your plan. I think that we only have 2.5% roughly to work with every
Yeah.
year.
We
And every time
understand.
someone gets more than 2.5%, someone
do.
gets less than that. And I think that over time, we've been very supportive to the schools,
No
but I think a
doubt.
lot of other departments now are starting to raise a lot of hell about their working conditions or their decreasing budgets.
And, just a plug for the other departments. The school department has a phenomenally wonderful working relationship with all of the other departments. And we would never want to be in a position of advocating that they go without what they need so that we could have what we need, because we rely on them.
Of course.
And we need them to have their priority needs met as well, because we do depend on them, all of them.
Yep.
So it really is a big picture and a team effort for sure. I will continue to advocate for what I think the schools need. But then there's reality, and we'll do the best with what we have.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions about this for the town manager?
I've got a million, but should we just do it another night?
We can. We can.
It's 20 past 10.
Is everybody okay with that? So we're going to put that as an agenda item, and then you may. I would never say no to our chair of our FinCom.
I think you should.
All right, no.
Terry Birch, well, actually,
But
I
is she
I
here
have
as
to
a
say no.
citizen?
I'm here as a citizen. My name is Terry Birchfield. I'm here as a citizen and as a member of the Finance Committee. Also, just to say, one point that I just wanted to bring up from the discussion was that the Finance Committee never asks for a forecast on potential debt that doesn't exist, because one of the things that not having a placeholder does is lets us see that, 23, 24, we've got some planning room there. We're going to need to come to a decision about. And the other thing I would say is that in the 7 years or 8 or however many years I've been on the Finance Committee now, the buildings have been discussed. There has been no plan. And until there is a plan, it's really hard to say what that forecast would look like. So 7 years, 8 years out, we still have a building problem. And probably looking at where there's a wiggle room in the budget coming forth, before somebody starts to identify that as potential for operational assignment somewhere, it's probably a good idea to, you guys are working on it now, trying to talk through what's going on with those, and I think that's great. So I just wanted to point that out, that, it's not bad to not put something that you're not sure is going to happen in the next 5 years in there. It's a good idea to leave it so you know exactly what you have to work with. So that's how my perspective is from sitting on the FinCom. And again, we will have cookies Thursday night, 6 p.m. We're starting early. And again, we'll be going through the whole motion as well, so.
And by the way, thanks for mentioning the building plan. Thanks for ripping the scab off that for 1 week that we didn't have it on the agenda.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. But I did want to point out that that's what we look at as the Finance Committee, is that, okay, so something's coming.
It's the elephant in the room.
It is a big hairy monster that, sorry about that. But I did want to at least address that in terms of as a debt, why you don't put that there.
Thank you.
Yeah, but
Thank you, Terry.
I think that, as soon as we had the discussion, this is a 5-year forecast, and says no debt, and everybody goes wink, wink, of course we're going to have debt. So I think that's ridiculous.
Well, but the issue is, we don't know debt for what.
Right.
We don't know if it's Turkey
There's no
Hill.
impending plan.
We don't know if it's Passios. We don't know if it's a fire truck.
But it's going to be something, so it should be.
you
But without a
plan for it if you don't
plan,
know
you
what it
can't
is?
have a plan.
It's kind of like at town meeting when somebody asked the Finance Committee, is our taxes going to go up if this happens? It's like, well,
Yes.
I can only tell you yes, because there's no plan. Because there's no plan, there's no estimate for what the cost is going to be. You don't know if you can cover it within the budget in terms of the regular debt, or if it's going to have to be exempt debt. You don't know. So, but I can probably, your taxes are going to go up. I don't know what else to say. So anyway, it's that's why we don't put it in there, so we see what the wiggle room is. But anyway.
The good news is school committee's Wednesday and FinCom is Thursday, and
But all budget all the time.
Yeah, this is like,
I do expect epic.
this is like binge watching. If you're a binge watcher for budget season, this is it. Okay, we're going to use the Economic Development Committee. We're going to do that another.
We're doing the capital plan?
Are we pushing off the capital plan?
Capital plan. Oh, boy. All right, we might push out the rest of this whole agenda. Let's do the capital plan.
All right.
This is the most important thing we're doing tonight.
Gee, I wonder who our capital plan representative is.
was the capital plan representative here at 5?
Yes, he was.
Wow.
Okay.
All right, so what qualifies as a capital project? The town's policy on capital expenditures defines capital projects as items that cost $10,000 or more with a life expectancy of 3 years or longer. This year's process, the Capital Planning Committee created a capital plan that consists of all the capital requests made by the town departments for 5 fiscal years and longer. And the Capital Planning Committee's first meeting to begin the phase was on September 10th. The documents were sent to departments in October, and the Capital Planning Committee met with departments throughout November and December to review all the capital requests. This year, the Capital Planning Committee approved new categories for which to evaluate capital projects, including categories that relate to the effectiveness of government, the effects on operating costs, the effects on revenues, and how the present project contributes to such things as economic growth, public safety, public health, and education. Based on responses to these categories, a project received a composite score, and the Capital Planning Committee used this information as a starting point for prioritizing projects. Based on the meetings with departments and the budget provided by the town manager, the CPC usually prioritize all the projects given the budget, and request for fiscal 21, that should say, provided a list to the town manager. And this is part of the town charter. Is the town manager can modify or add to that list as part of that, but I'm not making any changes to the proposed list that the Capital Planning Committee presented. So there were a total of 28 capital requests totaling $4,239,438 for fiscal 21. These included the Vertex projects, so that is not in the final list of recommended projects. So going through them, there were a total of, 2 new police cruisers, a new ACO vehicle, portable radios for the police department, the other half of the contingent of self-contained breathing apparatus for the fire department, the equipping the ambulance with ALS equipment, it's a phase 1, and overhaul of squad 3 for the fire department. For the school, includes a final phase of the asbestos abatement project, which was in the ceiling, and design for AC in the classrooms at primary, got old primary in my mind, and air conditioning at Turkey Hill Elementary School for the admin. For the highway department, includes the design for Flat Hill Culvert, a new trackless to replace one that will be going out of commission soon, and a 1-ton dump truck with plow.
So just to note that on that slide, you have the total capital plan there, but the items line listed right there add up to $1,329,133. The difference between that and the 4 million is the Vertex items.
Yes. Yep, and I missed the facilities projects. Go over those quickly too.
So the
Includes,
capital plan is how much?
Last line.
Well, she'll get there, I guess.
yep. The facilities projects include a reconfiguration of the carport for at the public safety building, reconfiguring the front entrance at the senior center, a kitchen remodel at the senior center, replacing the carpet at the library, the ADA ramp and sidewalk in front of Town Hall, kitchen remodel at the Ritter Building, an ADA ramp design at the Ritter Building, the cemetery parking lot at North Cemetery, and the Vertex numbers are all there, so they are not included in the final report as well. So if you want to go over each project, okay, I'm not seeing any. So the end results, you can skip down to the last slide. The total capital plan for fiscal 21 is $1,329,133 for 21 projects. And recommending, at this point in time, given the phase we are in the budget process, to use a combination of tax revenue and free cash to fund the capital plan.
Okay.
Any questions for Damon?
All sounds great.
So,
Now, the capital plan is up for discussion on the 28th as well, I would assume.
I don't see why not. Yeah, we can. It will be presented as well on Thursday to finance, so.
Yeah, is that
I won't be here on the 28th, though, so if you
Neither will I.
have major
Neither
questions,
will
ask
I.
me now.
So, but one of the things I want to, if I can, as you will be the acting chair, is that we have the ability to ask a lot of questions on our own because of our position. So really make sure that everybody's, everybody in the public gets to ask their questions. It's really a public forum. We will have this on our budget, on our agenda, I meant, forever. So at the public forum, I want the public to be able to ask questions that they feel they don't always get a chance to ask.
How are we advertising that? In any sort of Facebook way or
I can put it on
emails, town
Facebook.
email,
You can
things
put it
like
on
that?
Facebook now, yeah.
Because it's very discouraging to come to a public forum in which sometimes there's no public.
Well, the symposium was advertised a lot, and what did we have aside from elected and appointed officials, we probably had 6 people there.
It was
so.
still unique to have that. I mean, it was a fair amount of
Well,
people
I'm just saying, that was a lot of
together.
advertising. It's hard to generate,
Yeah,
especially in the
right,
winter.
right.
It's hard to generate people to come out. It really is difficult. But I agree, we should put it on all the media that we can.
I'm sure if
And
you
we
put
should
that
save our
school
questions
slide
for
up,
the next meeting.
Right.
you get a lot of folks to show up.
I would just have one question for Damon, and it's more of a comment. But, I mean, it makes sense that we're not allocating anything for the TC Passios building because it's under investigation right now for its future. The only caveat I have with the whole situation is right now it's still used primarily by children, and the Vertex studies identified in the ones that are listed in this plan were the things that were identified as either failures of the building or safety hazards of the building. And I don't know if anybody picked up the Lunenburg Ledger this week, but an interesting thing that occurred with the extended day program is that the state refused to fund the vouchers because the facility didn't meet state standards. And so here we're running a program that they designate and the state refers to as a daycare, and 10 families receive state vouchers for the program. The state denied giving the vouchers because of the facility doesn't meet daycare standards. And so I've had these concerns in the past, and then a statement in here said that it's actually Mr. Cassidy, the current facility meets all local safety and building codes. What does that mean? If we're not meeting state daycare codes to receive vouchers, the facility meets all local safety and building codes. I mean, there's high levels of lead water. It doesn't have any modernized, school-based security. So I've voiced concerns in the past. We're using a building that we know isn't good, and yet we're using it for children. So are we obligated to put some money into some minimal things if it involves things like the safety of the water and things like that? I just feel conflicted.
Know why the state refused?
I don't.
What the specific issues were? Because maybe we could address those.
Yeah, it said, it's just something I bring up because it's being used by children, and the state said, nope, we're not going to. And then it said in here that the town will fund the vouchers rather than fix the facility.
Well, again, I'd be interested to see what exactly the criteria were that they're betting against, and, is it, something that's actually run down with the building, or,
I think we should
at other times, it's like the size of the room is the wrong size, and things like that.
Dimensions, how close the
So,
bathrooms
so
are.
I would be interested to know what those were.
What the failures were, yeah, I think we should find
Well,
out.
it sounds like the school department does know what they are.
It says, we're recommending through the business office that we don't comply with the new regulations and we get out of the voucher program. To assist those TENS family, we will still honor the vouchers that the state would give them in the rate that the state established until the kids are out. It said the voucher program located TCP, and it said the town will fund the vouchers rather than fix the problems. And I just wanted to put a little bit of thought into what are the problems, why did it fail, and are we obligated to look into minimalist improvements to provide what I would want to comply with state standards if it's safety.
Yeah, right.
Daycare-based things. So
It's a
I
great
feel like
question.
we owe that
Did they
facility.
say it didn't pass safety?
Yes. Well, it doesn't meet facility, it doesn't,
it didn't meet facility requirements for daycare.
Right, so it doesn't mention anything about safety in that sentence. So
Well,
it
I
could
don't-
be other things. It could be that it's not ADA, compliant, which may be part of the state code. We'd have to know what it is that it failed.
Right.
But we do know there's very high levels of lead water. Whether or not that was a part of it, those are things I still feel really uncomfortable using it with children. And we have a severely failed building, and we're allowing it to continue to be used. And I guess the reason I'm bringing it up is we've allocated no money
Well, well, let me
to a
touch on your-
building that we have to.
Let me answer your question, your original question. I made sure that we sat down and went through all of the Vertex report items and individually looked for items that might be applicable to this year's capital plan or ones that should wait. Across the board, we have actually made progress just through the operating budget on individual projects. So it's actually more significant, the number that we've accomplished than I even realized myself. So we are making progress. We didn't determine that there are any that should be added this year, but I did advocate again, for any of the buildings, anything having to do with the building envelope that would prolong the life of the building, and operation of the building, be it the roof, be it caring for the masonry or the siding or replacing the sealants, any way that those could get on the capital plan in the future, I was advocating for. And even if it's, kind of too small to fit the capital plan, if you can lump projects together into an envelope project that would meet the capital plan, hopefully we could do that in the future.
Yeah, no, it's a confusing thing. We all know that we don't know the future of the building, but to read that, we're no longer receiving state money for the daycare program because it doesn't meet standards, and then we don't allocate any money to meet standards in the building, I just feel, confused.
I'm not dissing the Lunenburg Ledger at all, but sometimes when I read reports on meetings, the reports don't match the meeting. So you also need to be a little bit skeptical of what you read. So
I just believe it because I know the building has $2 million of allocated safety and failure needs from the Vertex trials. So it's believable because it's true.
I'd be willing to venture a guess
believable,
that.
but it may not be exactly that. That's all. I think it's a great question. and
But
we should
Heather,
find
that
out
building is
why
under
it's
town control, not school control, and that's why I bring it up. because
Program
it's-
is under school control, though.
No, but the building,
Right.
which the program is in,
But
is
the
under
school
the care,
hasn't come to
custody, and
us and said,
control
"Hey,
of the
listen, we have
town
to
manager, and
address
so
the
it's our
building."
responsibility to address building needs, because
But they haven't come to us, say, listen, we can't run this program there.
I'm coming to us to say, can I request a little bit more information at a future meeting on what those building failures were in that, because the building is under the town manager's control, not the school, so I feel if there's something there that we can fix, that we want to identify it now, while we're
That's-
That's a
building
great
the
thing.
process.
I hear you and I support what you're saying, but I think that that's outside of our area. I mean, the program has nothing to do with us, so to speak.
But it's in a building that's
Yeah,
under
but-
our care.
Again,
Heather's
we're doing a lot of speculation.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be amenities that are not there, like.
Yeah, we
Well,
don't
I'm just
know.
asking
It's more
if
than
we
just
find out,
building
that's all.
safety
Yeah,
failures,
right.
so.
That's all I'm asking for, is if Heather can find out.
And I just want to make one comment to your comment, which is that I would venture a guess that any building that is unsafe for children is probably also unsafe for adults. So, I mean, I think it's, buildings, as we make conclusions that they're no longer safe for children, I think we need to go beyond that and say they're probably not safe for people. Because I think we've been shuffling
I hyper-focus on the high
people
levels of
into
lead water. Very dangerous
these
for
buildings that
children.
we say are no longer good for kids, and then we put staff in them. So.
Okay, let's try to, number 2, Economic Development Committee, that's going on we're not doing that tonight.
Thank you.
Sign the FY '20 to FY '22 police contract. So this was all approved. There's
Yep.
nothing, we don't need a vote, right?
No,
We're just
just
gonna-
need to sign.
I love things that we don't have to.
Last
We already,
year.
we already voted on this, right?
Yes.
Yes. There we go. And we're going to sign the Colonial Power Consultant Agreement. Can you explain what this is for people listening?
That's not it.
That's not it.
I will.
So we're not going to sign that.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to, I do not have the file with me.
Sounds very serious, a
so-
Colonial Power Consultant Agreement.
They are our broker to do the municipal aggregation program that we secure, or they secure for us the best rate for that program. So it's just the broker agreement, and it's the same language as the last agreement that the town entered
That's
into.
it.
No changes.
And just to confirm, the rate is .001 kilowatt hour, correct? And
For
that,
the-
I think that's what the terms say, is what they take.
For the adder, yes.
So can we sign this one?
I do not. vote for
Okay.
this.
So I would entertain a motion that we sign this agreement, which is the same as last year's agreement for Colonial Power Consultants.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Somehow change that to, please.
They put that on there.
I finally got my real ID to say that and my passport. All right, what is this?
This is the
Oh, okay.
charter.
So now this is the review the charter, town charter documents to send to the state legislature. Everybody should have received in our document drive, the letter from town council
Signed by the chair.
regarding it. So this is actually an official submission to State Senator Tran and State Representative Hay. Any discussions about this? Okay. I would entertain a motion that we recommend the chair to sign this and then submit it to our state legislative team.
Can you explain how this is related to the delay, or is this something?
Well, I don't know that there was a delay, but I guess from the time that we passed it to the submitted it, they wanted to make sure they reviewed everything and put in, and you saw the documents in there, in the red line to explain how it came about, so that they have all the supporting documentation to pass the the special legislation.
Okay, and what step is it at now?
So now it will be in front of our state delegation. They will have to present it with their names on it as special legislation in both the House and the Senate, in that order. And then, once it passes both, hopefully it doesn't take a long time, but once we submit it, we can at least ask them if they've submitted it, so.
Thank you.
So I move we have the chair sign this letter to Representative Hay and Senator Tran.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Minutes. Do we have minutes? No, I don't think so. I didn't see them.
No.
Warrants. So accounts payable in the amount of $173,457.38. And payroll deduction warrant in the amount of $708,946.76. And payroll in the amount of $813,060.98.
Those are thank you letters for the sewer commissioners.
Okay. Action file issues. I just had one. I wanted to know I would like to, I think it would be appropriate, now that our state representative has resigned her position and gone on to other employment, I think it would be very nice for her years of service to recognize her and have her here at a future meeting and recognize her for the service to the district.
I agree.
It's a great idea.
All right, so we should try to see if we can do that on it's 11th or
11th?
the 18th. Yeah.
Okay.
If you can find out
Is this the most
from
recent ledger?
former representative when she's available.
Okay.
What do we want? Let's sign these. So these are letters.
Are we still on action items?
Yes.
Okay,
Do you have one?
yes.
Okay.
or just like questions for Heather. One was the intersection, and so that's cool. That's all set. Somebody asked me about TC Passios gym use. What is the process for reserving and or using that? I know some groups use the gym. Is that through you?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yep.
they could contact
I coordinate
Elaine.
with the school facilities director, though, because he's aware of the schedule that it's being used.
Okay, so the main point person is to contact
Come through me,
Elaine or
yes,
yourself?
yeah.
Okay. Just wanted to inquire about snow plowing this past storm. It was on Sunday, and then by Monday night, I was on Main Street, and like the sidewalks in the center weren't done yet. And even after the kiddos went to school this morning, the sidewalks on 2A hadn't been done yet. Is that related to the lack of personnel, or I was just last night, I was going down Main Street in the dark and had to be on the outside of all the cars that park there because Main Street wasn't cleared. And it was just really surprising and felt dangerous.
See, that's why sidewalks are most important in
and
winter.
walkability, I want to make sure that we're maintaining and focused on the paths we do have. And the conditions last night in the center of town were not safe. And then this morning to see the snow being cleared, I think around 9:30 after all the kids were in school. It was just surprising with the storm having been on Sunday and a Monday holiday. I didn't know if you
I
had any
don't
insight.
know the answer to that. So,
I thought it was odd too, when on my way to work, they were clearing.
Yeah, no, last night, that Main Street is very scary, and we are looking into improving walkability. But last night, there's a lot of use of the United Parish Building, Boy Scouts, yoga, ballet, and there's a lot of foot traffic, and it's also a fast throughway for people, unfortunately, cutting through to get to Chase Road. So it's a really dark and dangerous space right now, and at the very least, the sidewalk is definitely a big piece of the puzzle. So I just brought that up because I was just last night, and then somebody else was upset as they were walking and was sort of expressing like, what in the world is going on here? And then I got a message from them on their way home. They identified none of the other key sidewalks were cleared either. That was last night.
I'm sure there's a reason, and it wasn't just.
Yeah, and if it has to do with staffing and stuff, then we've talked about like, how do we resolve that? And if it's associated with that, then I definitely want to continue to look at how we can seek to make sure they have everything they need.
You could contract it as well if you don't have staffing.
I'm sending down 2 letters of thanks for their service to the town, to the members of the Sewer Commission that have resigned, Ryan Stober and Joan Pease. Committee reports.
Yeah, I have one. I also had I wouldn't say an action item, but maybe it's something to follow up on, which is, I was reading the Ledger a couple weeks, maybe 2 weeks ago, and in the front page was a story about one of the young students here in town who's going to be taking a trip to Sweden, I believe it is. And I thought it would be really nice if we could provide said young man with a letter of support or encouragement. Because, based on the article, it made it seem as if this was quite the honor for him to have to represent his community at this event. But I don't have all the details. But it made me think about the need for a community award. And if that's something that we want to get in the habit of doing, of having some kind of program to recognize townspeople for their contributions to the town or, to the state or whatever, just to, because I think there's a lot of people out there who are doing a lot of great stuff. And something as simple as a letter from their Board of Selectmen or, those tokens, I think really do go a long way. So maybe we can plan to talk about that at a workshop or something.
Sure. That's a good idea.
Otherwise, I went to the library meeting, and it was most excellent. I really like how the library, first of all, it's my first time meeting the library director, and there is no question that he is engaged, knowledgeable, and passionate about his responsibility within our community. And the board, while I was there, they were also doing his performance evaluation, and the board has a very favorable assessment of his performance for the town. He's a very impressive man. So, a couple things that highlighted from that meeting, that they received a grant from Hannaford for $3,500, which is pretty cool, and they're going to use that money to replace some of their bookshelves. They have a request in for $5,000 for programs to allow for more activities excuse me. They also talked about the Friends of Lunenburg Library, and one of their concerns that came up was that they rely on donations to contribute to operating expenses, such as building maintenance. Now, I had the opportunity to speak in more detail to Heather about that to get a better understanding of kind of what's going on there, and I think that there's just opportunity probably just to communicate a little differently to help understand some of that stuff. They also mentioned that the big thing that was talked about in this meeting was that they're looking to go fine-free for people who are under the age of 18. And based on the research that has come out so far is that when you offer no fines for late books, that you actually end up getting more money, that people will typically donate more. So what they're looking to target, and they voted in favor of moving in this direction, but they're looking to target young adults who are under the age of 18, and the way to do it that they're thinking of is doing young adult material. So rather than saying if you're under 18, it's saying, hey, there are books and material that are geared for kids, and that the people who rent those materials would not be required to pay a late fee. Part of it is also they want to decrease the barriers to young people using the library as late fees, and I can attest to this myself, that I somehow had rented a book and I stopped renting books from the library as a kid when I was like 16 because I could never find the book, and my parents were like, I'm not paying whatever money for it, so it was what it was. But it certainly helps reduce barriers, which especially targets people who are probably the people who need to use the library the most, who are the most disadvantaged people among us. So that was pretty exciting to hear about, and more information will be coming from them on that. And that was unanimous support, and they are having a book and bake sale on June the 6th, which is the first Saturday in June.
Well, this is a little bit advance notice for June the 6th. June the 6th.
They're planning ahead. They're getting excited.
You know,
Any other committee reports?
I've talked to the library director and to arrange meeting rooms, and he's great. He really is.
Pleasant, excellent, yeah.
And I've also read about that fine free, and it's really working in big cities. It's working out very well.
Yeah.
They're getting more books back.
Yeah. Books are coming back.
Right,
Yeah.
right. I attended the Central Mass, sorry about my voice, the Central Mass Regional Stormwater Coalition meeting last Wednesday morning in Auburn. The coalition is offering standard operating procedures, SOPs, and illicit discharge detection and elimination, IDDE, workshops offered at no cost to coalition members like Lunenburg. And it's going to be right next door in Fitchburg. Taking advantage of these workshops, offered at no cost to coalition members, will save communities the cost of paying a consultant to run these required trainings. And it was interesting. Guests at this meeting included town engineers from Ayer, Grafton, and Leominster. And although I cringe when staffing is proposed, as I think the town's #1 priority should be to keep headcount down and use the staff we have more effectively, I encourage Lunenburg to think about adding a town engineer to the list of future positions to be filled someday, because many of the towns in the Central Mass Regional Stormwater Coalition have town engineers, and those communities are able to save considerably on consulting fees. If used effectively, a town engineer position could easily more than pay for itself. Something else, something to think about.
Any other committee reports?
Oh, and I'm going to the MPO meeting tomorrow.
Right.
Do any towns have like agreements where they share engineers, like the workload? Like we're a smaller town, like maybe like I don't know if they talk about that, like Townsend, maybe Pepperell, maybe Lunenburg Town.
That's an interesting thought, but you know, there is a lot of engineering. We pay a lot of money to consultants. Consultants do a lot of the work in Lunenburg.
Can we compile that? Because that's come up before, like the amount of cost associated with hiring versus what it would cost to employ. I
Well,
mean,
it also depends on the discipline, because you can't just hire a civil engineer can only do civil engineering, they can't do your structural engineering and other
Right,
things,
right.
so.
They're not gonna, it's not gonna be a one-size-fits-all, one engineer's not.
You're still gonna end up, you're still gonna end up having to hire
I think
consultants.
that would be
Yes,
part of
yes.
compiling the information to see if there's one that's used the most and how much that's costing. I mean, we don't know without compiling, that's sort of step one, but it'll
Not
be
looking to do it.
interesting.
Any other committee reports?
No.
Okay. So, that is the end of current business, no old business. Next week, the 28th, in this room, there will not be a regular Board of Selectmen meeting, but it will be a public symposium or a public forum where it will be based on public asking questions of the town manager, and the superintendent will be here too, about the 5-year forecast, about the capital report that we've seen today, and then any questions they had on the symposium that happened last fall. So it's a good opportunity if you're a resident and you saw those either in person or you saw the broadcast of that meeting or this meeting, to ask questions. We'll probably ask, I won't be here, the vice chair, Mrs. Luck, will be chairing that. But I'm assuming that you should come prepared with some questions, but don't come with a volume, and prepare to be at the mic for a half an hour to 45 minutes on your own either. So maybe you want to round robin it, I'll leave it open to you, but we do want to make it open and accessible to everybody.
Now, the budget presentation is when?
February 13th.
Okay, so, at the
Finance.
Finance Committee meeting?
Just in time to ruin your Valentine's Day.
Sometimes it's on Valentine's. I know a few years
I
ago it was. Yep.
So I'll have to tell Mr. Rogers, my buddy, to plan his questions out.
There you go. And then, so I will not be here, and I will not be here the following week. Unfortunately, I'll be out of town both weeks, so I leave it in good hands with Mrs. Luck and the rest of the board. And
We can do it.
Three of us.
any final public comment from the public? Any final public comment from the board? I think we're commented out.
Yeah,
No, maybe not.
My comment is just generalized appreciation. I know the town manager has a big commute. We actually have a citizen here at 11 o'clock. Damon's been here since 5 PM. And so, I mean, and we were talking to somebody recently that didn't know we didn't get paid, and they didn't realize how many hours that, and so just generalized appreciation, especially for Damon tonight, having started at 5. It's 11 o'clock. That's a tremendous amount of volunteer time
I
to
agree.
participate. And I think sometimes we get tired and we sometimes are opposing each other, but I appreciate all of everybody's time to
I
make
agree.
all this
Well,
available and
I
happen.
think it's a good sentiment, so thank you.
Yeah.
And
Thank
and
you.
for extra double secret credit for this week goes to Damon. That was unanimous consent.
No supper?
No, oh, I haven't had supper either.
Well, he was here since 5, so his opportunity was even lower.
All right, I will entertain a moment to adjourn,
Motion.
Motion?
take that, easier for me to say at 11 o'clock. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
So moved.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None, have a great